Good friends.
Great people.
It's our downtown.
You can't beat it.
Welcome.
Rediscover the magic in Minot.
2020 has been a year. So I tell you what, let's focus on something positive. How about a Citizen of the Year? This year for the State of the City, we are going to be looking for one individual who has done magic things in Minot. There's a catch though. I want you to submit the application, or rather the provenance that explains why that this individual deserves the Citizen of the Year award for the City of Minot. So I want you to grab a phone or anything else that you can record on and make your submission. Even if you don't know how to run a camera phone or recording device, we can certainly help you out right here in the Minot Public Library with some great people that can even teach you a new skill. But you know what? We're going to make this even a little better. The winner of the Citizen of the Year is going to have a $1,000 donation made in their name to their favorite charity right here in Minot. That is all compliments of First International Bank and Trust here of Minot, and even for doing such a great job of making that submission, the person that is submitting the video is going to be given $100 in chamber bucks, courtesy of North Dakota Farmers Union Insurance. So, how do you get those submissions? Well, we'll show you how.
What makes Minot magic for me is the way our community comes together. There is no other community that is able to come back from a setback like Minot.
We'll call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, Monday, November 16th, 2020. It is 5:30 in the afternoon. I would ask that all in attendance put your electronic devices on vibrate or silence to keep the distractions down to a minimum. Roll call, please.
Here. Janser. Janser. Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Pajagula.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is consider the report of the Planning Commission, but first,
I have a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Alderwoman Evans.
I would like to move item 4.2, employee recognition, and COVID update from Ms. Clute and others to this part of the meeting.
A motion to move 4.2 and COVID discussion up to our next item. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Second call for discussion. Final call. Please call the roll.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser. Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. For record, that was a yes, and motion is approved. That does take us to our next item for the afternoon then, and this is employee recognition. It's not too often that we, especially in 2020, get an opportunity to identify one of the great folks that goes to work each and every day for the city and does an outstanding job in the community, and especially recognized on the national level. So for this, for Sean Danielson, for the Public Safety Hero of the Year by Safe Fleet Fleet Mind. So Sean has worked for the City Sanitation Department for 6 years now and drives one of our automated sanitation trucks all around town each and every day. His supervisor nominated Sean for his award because of his exceptional driving record and commitment to serving the community. Safe Fleet promotes safe driving behavior across North America and chooses one person each year for the Hero of the Year award. Driving data from Danielson's truck was analyzed by Safe Fleet. The truck system does keep track of any time the truck experiences any harsh braking, any speeding, any tailgating, and any other data. So in choosing Sean, Safe Fleet said Sean is recognized for demonstrating exceptional road awareness and safe driving habits with a proven history of the longest and most consistent safety driving record in the city of Minot, and we are proud to reward him with the 2020 National Grand Prize. So, Sean, if you would come forward, please. So, Mr. Sean Danielson's, congratulations. You do receive a $1,000 national award from Safe Fleet for your outstanding service, dedication not only to the community, but for safe driving. So for all of this, we need to actually have you grab one side and take a picture. And I say round of applause too. That's pretty awesome. Nationwide. So with that, we'll find you the real check too. I don't think they take these at the bank. But we do want to also give you this award certificate so you can either hang this up in your office or even at home that, again, award the certificate in honor of outstanding performance, gladly presenting Sean Danielson, Public Safety Hero 2020. So again, congratulations, Sean. And always within 2020, we try to avoid the handshakes and everything else like that. But I do have the mayor's coin as a token of appreciation for the hard work that you do to the city each and every day, because it is each and every day that, of course, this data was tracked, but an outstanding job to the community, and it was recognized nationwide. So we greatly appreciate all of it, Sean. Thank you. Did you have any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. City Manager.
I just wanted to point out too, this was not just a national award. I believe the company sponsoring this is located in Canada. So this award was throughout North America.
And considering the weather like we've even seen today, being recognized in some of the harshest weather, that's outstanding in and of itself. So congratulations again, Sean. Next item is our COVID discussion. We have asked First District Health Unit Director Lisa Clute for an update every 2 weeks, currently on what the situation is within Ward County, the city of Minot. Ms. Clute, are you on the phone? You are, Lisa. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you would, we'd appreciate an update on the current situation with the COVID-19 response throughout the community, the numbers that you are seeing and trends, and also a little bit of an update as quite a few things have changed since Friday night at 10 o'clock.
I don't have information. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Just a minute. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please continue.
Okay. So when, I don't have any information regarding who continues to feel sick or has potential long-term impacts to that. It's just the recovered indicates that they are no longer contagious. Currently, we have 79 long-term residents in Ward County, and those are all in Minot positive cases, and we have 70 long-term care facility staff that are currently positive. We monitor those cases, obviously, because they have typically significant impact on our hospitalizations. If you've seen throughout the state in the last few weeks, hospitalizations have increased substantially, and that is reflected within our community also. Trinity Hospital, their census changes obviously hourly, but I can say at one point in time, Dr. Sather was texting me, I believe this was Friday evening, indicated that they had 66 positive cases. 4 were on vents, 4 were on BiOp machines, and then others, 20 on the BiMap machines, and several, I don't know how many, on high flow oxygen. That is a snapshot in time. That is not reflective as to what it is today, and I couldn't tell you what exactly their census is today. But certainly they have done an excellent job creating capacity every place they can. As always, the capacity is a staffing issue, not necessarily a bed issue. We do look daily at hospital capacity across the state and how many ICU beds are available and hospital beds are available. However, to be clear, that is just a 1 minute in time snapshot. Those numbers change dramatically throughout the day. So we do monitor that, and we talk frequently, several times a day sometimes, regarding how things are going and any assistance that they may need, or just strategies on how to continually increase capacity. At this point, they still are testing asymptomatic individuals, and we at First District are testing, they are testing the symptomatic and we are testing the asymptomatic individuals. This last week, we did about 1,800, I believe Jose said, tests within the First District Health Unit. We continue to test twice a week at MSU, and we have our static site. You can call for appointments. Right now, we are able to get you in within a 2-day time period for those testing appointments at First District. We also have testing events throughout the rest of the district, and I won't go through all of that with you. Certainly, Friday night was kind of a, I don't know, well, certainly things changed on Friday evening when the governor indicated his executive orders. We are still going through all of those executive orders and figuring out how best to apply those. It's pretty straightforward. If you are a entity such as a food establishment that we licensed, we apply those executive orders to that license. And so those were all communicated out with the, to all of the food vendors and restaurants and suppliers and so forth that we license. The 50% capacity, actually, currently our recommendations were at a 25% capacity, so the 50% capacity increased on large group gatherings. We are receiving several calls about that. There is a statement on the website that indicates that plans should be submitted to local public health units in regards to events. And so what we will do with that is we currently are accepting event planners or whatever, any organization that submits a health plan to us, we will be reviewing that and looking at its compliance with the executive orders. We will not, we will indicate to the event planners that those events do or do not comply with the executive orders. It's up to those event planners to make those decisions as to what they choose to do with our information, but we will review them and give that information to them. We have had several, our center has been very busy today, and several people addressing thoughts, comments, questions in regards to the executive orders, and we are providing them the information that we have at this time. They are continually being, protocols being established, and at this point, I can't say that all of those are in place. We were not privy to the executive orders prior to them coming out. So we are reacting just as everyone else is in regards to that. So the other information that I wanted to, I wake up every morning thinking there is a glimmer of light at the end of this tunnel. And right now it's just a pinhole, but it's there. And the vaccine, as I'm sure you've heard about in national news, is having a much higher than expected efficacy rate. We are thrilled to see that. We are seeing 90% with Pfizer and 94.5%, I believe it was, with Moderna. It is anticipated that Pfizer will go to FDA emergency approval next week, Moderna shortly thereafter. Right now, we are planning in the state for approximately, and these have not been solid numbers, but based on the doses that are available, we can best guess what our allocation would be. And within the state of North Dakota, it would be about 21,000 doses, either the first or second week in December. For First District, when I look at those 21,000 and we have been distributed vaccine through the formula, I can anticipate about 1,500 doses coming into First District. So with that being said, it will first go to healthcare providers, and there is priorities within the healthcare providers. We have developed a vaccination task force or COVID vaccine task force at First District, and we are organizing a meeting with all the healthcare providers in 2 weeks. I can't remember the exact date, or I guess next week. So we will be going through those priorities and determining how best to get those out. The way that the COVID vaccine will be distributed is through any provider that has enrolled to be a COVID vaccine provider. So most of our healthcare providers within this district have enrolled to do that. So we will be working with them to make sure that those go out, and in a very timely manner, because the first doses that are coming in are requiring the very significant cold storage. The next doses that would be coming through with Minerva has a different storage capacity, and we will be receiving that information as it comes. So we are working to develop the plans to get this vaccine out to the people as soon as possible, but recognizing it will be dispersed in priority groups. We'll have more information tomorrow with the state priority groups. However, we locally will have some flexibility as to those priority groups within healthcare workers. So I'm sure that we will be looking at COVID unit employees, ICU, emergency room staff, emergency room staff and so forth. The other comment that I wanted to make, and I think this information was shared with, I know it was with the mayor, and I believe that he distributed to the council members. When we look at leading causes of death and how that, how COVID relates to the other leading causes of death. What I hear most people that are wondering about this compare it to the flu. I'll just indicate that in 2018, there were 172 flu deaths, influenza and pneumonia deaths within North Dakota. 2019, 157. And based on our current trajectory, we look to come in on 2020 at about 145. We also looked at where we were at on COVID deaths, and as I stated earlier, at this point in time, we're at 95 COVID deaths. In October, in October, and this is statewide, in October, we look to come in at, sorry, I got the wrong numbers here, 571 deaths from COVID, and projecting that onward, looks like with a 50%, well, I won't go into the projections, but it is very fair to say that COVID will definitely exceed flu by substantial percentages. Right now, it is ranking right up there with cancer and heart disease, and then other diseases include everything. And then COVID would be probably third or fourth leading cause of death this year. So we continue to work with partners throughout to not only respond to this and to help mitigate, promote mitigation strategies, but also to plan. And those plannings include several different meetings. I stood up the Emergency Operations Center, can't remember, just recently, And we are looking at all issues. So we have had discussions with funeral homes within the community. They are at times overwhelmed, but doing an outstanding job with their increased demand at this point. So we continue to plan for effective, but most importantly, humanely and respectful ways to deal with large numbers of deaths that we are experiencing right now. At this point, as of this evening, we are handling it with our current capabilities. So with that, I always say I'm going to try to keep these short, but it seems like we got a lot going on. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Ms. Yes, thank you, Ms. Clute.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Clute.
Certainly a lot of information. Now we're getting a little feedback, so you may want to turn down either your microphone or change back to whatever you did have. Any questions for Ms. Clute at this time? Alderwoman Olson, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Clute, I noticed, I believe it was in some news release that came out after Governor Burgum's mask mandate that we could possibly save about 250 lives with this mask mandate. Is that an accurate estimate? Am I remembering the numbers correctly? Do you have information on that?
I did see that, or I did hear that. I am not sure exactly where those numbers came from, but I would anticipate that there was a formula utilized at the current rate of deaths or increase in deaths that we are seeing, and any mitigation information that they may have had, but I don't know where he came up with that number.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Ross.
Hey, Lisa, we've been in a mask mandate in the city of Minot for 4 weeks now. When do you expect to get results from a mask mandate? When can we expect to see a slowdown?
Well, I think it's all dependent on how uniformly it is exercised. We certainly have seen increase in, and this is just anecdotal and observation wise, but we've certainly seen an increase in mask usage. We would typically see whenever you instigate mitigation efforts like that, probably a 4 or 5 week delay in the spread and close contacts and so forth.
You'd cut out just a momentary, but it's 4 to 5 week period from what I understood.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderwoman Olson.
Just one more. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've all heard it, but I think we need to hear it from you, Lisa, as well. Recommendations for the holidays, Thanksgiving in particular.
Well, obviously, when we are seeing a positivity rate spread, like we are seeing in this community, the recommendations have always been to limit your group sizes and, as you know, come up with creative different ways to have Thanksgiving memorable experiences with your family. You know, you won't be seeing large groups at restaurants this year, and if there are, they would be spaced and practicing the mitigation practices. But I think most importantly, within your household, only you can determine, you know, the risks, who is at higher risk, who is out in the community or has potential exposure more, all of those, and just make good common sense decisions. There is a concern that there would be an uptick after Thanksgiving, and we are just pleading with you all to make good decisions based on your family's.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Clute. I did have a number of people that reached out to me starting Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday for the public's information on this as well, what came down from the executive orders and from the state health officer. Those were received approximately just a few minutes before 10 o'clock by me on Friday night, and I did forward that information, I believe, onto council. I was in a little bit of an area that was touch and go with cell phone reception. But for the public's information, much of the media had that before even I did for consumption. So with that, we did spend some time over the weekend talking. I know the chief had some limited, we had some limited availability to get through all of this information to figure out how we as a community were going to move forward with this in terms of the enforcement with the executive order. As Ms. Clute had pointed out, that some of these are, again, being redefined. We expect some of them to be perhaps a little better defined overnight tonight, and with some of that information coming tomorrow. But many of those questions did not have answers from me over the weekend, and hopefully we'll have some of those answers by tomorrow on process, procedure, and otherwise. But they did come on very, very short notice, and we're doing our best to try to stay in alignment with what those executive orders are from both the governor and from the state health officer. We can certainly tackle more of this information under other business unless there's any questions of me or for Ms. Clute at this time. All right. Thank you, Ms. Clute. That does take us to our next section of our City Council meeting. This is the report of the Planning Commission under Section 3. We do have a number of different items in the Planning Commission, including a couple of public hearings. There are 4 separate items that are not included in those public hearings. We can take those individually, or we can take them under consent as recommended. I will look to the council for direction. Alderman Pittner.
Are you asking for consent items, Mayor, to be pulled?
Consent on 3.1 for 3.4, unless any one of them need to be talked about individually, or all 4 of them individually. If we don't have a consent, Alderwoman Olson.
I would move approval on items 3.1 through 3.3.
3.3?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion for items 3.14 through 3.3 as recommended by the Planning Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Any discussion? Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, items 3.1 through 3.3 as recommended by the Planning Commission for approval, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 3.4 is conditional use permit, Prairie Green Addition, 100 foot of lot 25. The recommendation to the City Council is to adopt a resolution for a conditional use permit to operate a doggy daycare at 3001 7th Street Northwest. Documents are attached.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
I thought maybe, Mr. Mayor, that maybe someone in the audience did want to speak to it, but if not, well.
There is anyone in the audience that wants to speak on the motion or on the item? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve and a second. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 3.5 is public hearing, Outlot 1, Section 10, 15483. This is a public hearing to consider the request from Brad Abel, applicant to the plat of outlot of an unplatted portion of the northeast quarter of Section 10, 155 North, 83 West, to be known as Outlot 1 of Section 10, 154 North, 83 West, and to rezone the resulting property from AG, Agricultural District, to P, Public, for a family cemetery for private use. Additionally, the future land use map of the comprehensive plan is going to be amended from rural agriculture to cemetery. The three recommendations before council are as follows: pass an ordinance on first reading to change the zone from AG to P, Public, adopt a resolution to amend the comprehensive land use map from rural agricultural to to cemetery, and 3, approve an outlot plat from an unplatted portion of the northeast quarter of Section 10, 154 North, 83 West, for a family cemetery for private use. This is a public hearing. Anyone can come forward and speak either in favor or opposed on the issue. Second call on a public hearing on the issue that is before us. Final call. Look for a motion. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item with staff recommendations.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to close the public hearing and pass the staff recommendation, second by Alderman Ross. Discussion on the motion from the council. Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Dancer,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 3.6, another public hearing, the Highlander Estates Second Edition, lots 1, 2, 4, and 8. This is a public hearing to consider a request by the Blue Ridge Properties, LLC, and Highlander Office Park, LLC, applicants to rezone lots 1, 2, 4, and 8, the Highlander Estates Second Edition, from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District. Additionally, the applicants are also applying for a conditional use permit on Lot 8 for a car wash. Two recommendations to council are to pass an ordinance on the first reading to change the zone from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District, and 2, pass a resolution for a conditional use permit on Lot 8 for a car wash. Again, this is a public hearing on the item that is before us. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak, either in favor or opposed? Second call on the public hearing. Final call. What are the wishes of the council? Alderman Pittner.
Mayor, maybe just a clarification first. Are we able to close the public hearing and pass these individually?
Individually on the recommendations?
Correct.
We are planning department, or maybe our city attorney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you can split the motion and vote on those individually.
Okay.
I don't know how it would affect the planning application, though. That would be for Brian.
We can split them, and then we'll ask our community development director to come forward, perhaps for a little clarification before we take the motion. Good evening, Mr. Billingsley.
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor Sitma, Alderman Pittner. The request before you this evening is for a rezone and a conditional use permit. The rezone is to C2 commercial, and the conditional use permit is to allow a car wash on the site. Therefore, the rezone has to be approved in 2 readings, and the conditional use permit, I believe, just in 1 reading. There's no public hearing on that. So, yes, it could be split, but I don't think it's going to impact either application.
Perfect. The only reason I ask is I have no problem with the number 1 recommendation. Number 2, I would abstain from due to a conflict.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's the only reason I ask.
Yeah, it shouldn't impact anything.
So if I could make the motion to close public hearing and approve item number 1 with staff recommendations.
We do have a motion to close the public hearing and pass item number 1. We will take item number 2 separately with staff recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This is the second item under 3.6, pass resolution for a conditional use permit for Lot 8 for a car wash.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Alderman Pittner.
Just want to be clear, I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, motion is to pass the resolution, conditional use permit of Lot 8 for a car wash as recommended. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Abstain?
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 3.7, another public hearing on Outlot 15 Northeast Quarter, Section 26, 156 North, 83 West. Public hearing to consider a request by Blake and Pamela McKay to plat a new outlot to include all of Outlot 13 and a portion of the unplatted Northeast Quarter of Section 26, 156 North, 83 West into a new outlot to be known as Outlot 15 of Northeast Quarter, Section 26, 156 North, 83 West, for the purpose of installing a new row of trees around the outside perimeter of the property. The resulting property is going to be rezoned from Agricultural District to RA, which is Agricultural Residential District, to just RA Agricultural Residential District. There are two recommendations to City Council: is to pass an ordinance on first reading to change the zone from AG and RA Agricultural Residential District to just RA Agricultural District, and to approve the new outlot to include all of the Outlot 13 and portions of the unplatted Northeast Quarter of Section 26, 155 North, 83 West, to be known as Outlot 15 of Northeast Quarter, Section 26, 156 North, 83 West. Again, this is a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or opposed to the article before us. Second call for public hearing. Final call. What are the wishes of the council? Alderman Pittner.
Mayor, I move that we close public hearing and approve the item with staff recommendations.
Motion to approve with staff recommendations by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. One final item within the planning portion is the zoning ordinance text amendment, Chapter 20, flood protection requirements. The recommendation to the City Council was to pass an ordinance on first reading to amend the Chapter 20 of the Minot zoning ordinance. Changes include formatting, adjustment, clarifying language surrounding the structural equipment, such as heating, plumbing, and ventilation systems to be elevated at least 1 foot above base flood elevation, and the addition of the severability clause. What are the wishes of council?
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion? Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us into consent section of our council tonight. We do have 4.1. We've already taken care of 4.2. And so 4.3 then through 4.11. Are there any individual items that need to be pulled for individual discussion? Seeing none, I would look for the wishes of the council on the consent. Alderman
Mr. Mayor.
Ross.
Move approval.
Motion for approval consent on the all the remaining items, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion? Alderwoman Olson.
Just a question on 4.11. Where does this kind of fall with the governor's new mandates?
Might be a good one to pull. We'll pull that one for individual
right.
discussion. Should motion maker and second good with all the remaining items? Okay.
Yes.
Any final discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the motion is to approve all the remaining items excluding 4.2 and 4.11. Please call the roll.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 4.11 is mask usage resolution. On August 17, 2020, the council meeting, City Council approved a temporary employment policy regarding mask usage, 3670. And October 19, 2020, the City Council approved a resolution adopting a temporary policy requiring the visitors to wear masks while in city buildings. That is item 3675. Both of the temporary policies are set to expire November 16, 2020, unless extended by the council. The recommendation is the City Council modify the time frame to be consistent with the mayoral mask mandate, which is to remain in effect until the underlying state of emergency is ended or it is modified or terminated sooner by the council. The recommendation to City Council is to extend the expiration of the following resolution until the underlying state of emergency ends, unless either resolution is modified or terminated sooner by the council. Resolution adopting a temporary employment policy regarding the mask usage, and 2, resolution adopting the temporary policy requiring visitors to wear masks while in the city buildings. And it's a really good question, and I would look to our acting city manager or perhaps to legal for some clarification.
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Olson, the first resolution in this item is a temporary employment policy dealing specific with city employees and how any issues with mask usage would be dealt with city employees. So it's slightly different than the governor's mandate. The second resolution, and again, was extending what was in place prior to the governor's executive orders, again pertaining to city-owned or controlled buildings. This may be a little bit repetitive with the most recent guidelines issued by the state. They could remain in effect after December 14th when the governor's order expires. So that was, I think, some of the thinking here. And this was in place prior to the governor taking his latest action as well. The city council could adjust this or amend it in a future date, either rescind it, set a date for it to expire, or continue it for a longer term as well.
Thank you. And knowing that, I would move approval on that item.
Motion to approve by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. There is a little bit of difference, too, coming down from a governor's, or I should say state public health officer's mandate versus what we had in place as well. That was that information I also did have City Attorney Ms. Hendershot send out with the differences on who would then prosecute if it were to come from a mandate from the city or if it were to come from the governor or from the state health officer. And under the current executive order, the infraction would then be handled, and I'm looking to our city attorney, by the Ward County State's attorney if challenged, which is different than if a mandate had been put in place by either the council or myself, which would have been a Class B misdemeanor with a, let's say, stiffer penalty and fine in that regard. So that was information that I felt pertinent as well, not knowing that the mandate was coming. And also, as I had mentioned earlier, that it's likely that some of this information could be adjusted tomorrow morning with some clarification. I'm not sure which order or mandate is going to be adjusted, but I would expect some. So I'll be supporting the motion. Alderman Ross.
I could, if Chief Klug can step up to the podium, just a couple of, maybe one or two quick questions. Basically, I mean, the only question is, I mean, you've been seeing reports or hearing reports of some sheriff's departments across the state saying they're not going to enforce the mask mandate. Can you tell us how you, what your instructions are or directives are to your staff that are out on the street?
Hey, Alderman Ross, Mr. Mayor, we did have some conversation. Part of that was to wait until we got through this meeting just to make sure that the council didn't have some other direction for us. At this point, you know, under the governor's order, part of that is education. And I think the number one way we're going to try to resolve any complaints we respond to is just try to inform them of what the order is, make sure they understand it, ask them to comply with that order, and hopefully they will do that and we can go on our way and they can finish their business. If they don't, right now we have directed our staff to issue written warnings, and We also have gotten some direction from the district court and state's attorney's office over the weekend, basically indicating that, if we want a site, it's going to go into court. And then they're trying to get that process pushed through with a $50 fine attached to it. So basically, if they plead guilty, it'll be $50 and it'll be a done deal. Otherwise, it would fall under an infraction, could be up to $1,000. So, I think the number one thing, we're not going to take the stance that some of the sheriff's departments have taken. I think it is important. I think we do have to enforce it. It is an order from a governor, and there is a state law that directs us to enforce that law. So we will do it, but we will do it with discretion, and we want to make sure that we do it fairly across the board. So we want to give people an opportunity, but some people just have stood up to us and said, we're not going to do it. So
Continue.
Since the mandate, have you written any citations or warnings?
we have not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief while he is at the podium? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Alderwoman Evans.
So just to clarify, these are the two city policies, not your mask mandate. This is for city employees and visitors in city-owned and operated properties.
That is
correct?
correct. That
Okay.
is correct. Any further discussion? Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padjagula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma, Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to the action items section of our council meeting this evening. Number one is a public hearing, Renaissance Zone number 95, conditional approval. This is TIDA Incorporated. TIDA LLC, represented by Mr. Gabriel Holt, seeks to construct a new building located at 619 North Broadway, which has been unoccupied for several years. TIDA is requesting a 5-year property tax exemption, including improvements. The Renaissance Zone Review Board recommends conditional approval of the application for a Renaissance Zone project filed by Gabriel Holt for a 5-year property tax exemption, including improvements on the property located at 619 North Broadway, TIDA Second Edition, Lot Number 1. This is a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or opposed to the item that is before us. Second call for a public hearing. Final call. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council? Alderwoman Evans.
Before a motion is put out, we can do it after the motion, I don't really care. I would like to ask some questions of Mr. Billingsley.
We'll take a motion and then we'll get
Okay.
to comments. What is a motion, what are the wishes of the council? Alderwoman Evans, or Olson.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we close the public hearing and approve the item.
We have a motion to close the public hearing and approve the item. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Alderman Padagula. Good evening again, Mr. Billingsley, Alderwoman Evans.
Hi, Brian. So a constituent has reached out to us who's very involved in and a proponent of our Renaissance Zone program here in Minot, and had some concerns, and I'm hoping to walk through them with you, so at least my concerns can be addressed, and maybe some of my colleagues who also received the constituent outreach as well. So first, do you want to just give us an overview of just the Renaissance Zone program and its intentions and functions and?
Certainly. Yeah, Mayor Sitma, Alderwoman Evans, the purpose of the Renaissance Zone program is to improve properties in older neighborhoods of the city. You'll find the programs available in downtown Minot and along properties along North Broadway. It's been around for about 20 years now. We've had close to 100 cases. This is case number 95 that we've had. In 20 years, we average about 5 cases per year. Several of the buildings that have been rehabbed in downtown Minot over the last 20 years have taken advantage of this program. in this matter, the question was asked about whether this is the highest and best use and best return to the taxpayers. That is not in the criteria for approving a Renaissance Zone project. The criteria to approve a Renaissance Zone project can be found on page 2 of my memo to the council. It's at the very top of page 2. The project has to be consistent with the Renaissance Zone Development Plan, which it is. It has to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, which it is. It has to be consistent with our zoning. The zoning is C2, and a car wash is a permitted use in a C2 zone, so it's permitted there. It conforms with all city ordinances, which it does. It has to be, cannot be a previous beneficiary of a Renaissance Zone project. The property is vacant and it has never been approved for a previous project, so it is eligible. The construction costs have to exceed 50% of the current true and full value of the property, and in this case, it well exceeds that number. And then the last requirement is at least 80% of the investment is classified as capital improvements, which in this case it does. So as staff, we review whether or not a request meets all these requirements. And if it does, we will recommend to the applicant that they file an application with us, which this applicant has done so. It's gone through the review board, and the review board has recommended approval of this case to be forwarded here. I'm really not a big fan of changing the rules in the middle of an application. And in my opinion, this is more of a policy question, and a policy question, I don't like addressing them in the middle of an application. I'd rather discuss that in another forum. I'm not opposed to changing the rules, but I don't like changing the rules in the middle of an application.
So the next concern, this type of development is not easily reused. What happens if the car wash fails? We will have used up our one chance only on development that has a singular use and purpose.
Yes, Alderwoman Evans, yes, that is correct. The way the rules are set up now with the state of North Dakota, a property can only request and be approved one time for a Renaissance Zone project. I did speak to the director of the program down in Bismarck, and she told me that during the next legislative session, she is going to work to try to get that rule changed. She's received feedback from several cities from throughout the state requesting that rule be changed. So there might be a chance that it could be changed next year during the next legislative session.
Another concern, North Broadway is doing fine and redeveloping without incentives. Why do we need to give this car wash an incentive?
Yes, actually the property next door to this site actually received a Renaissance Zone approval incentives about 5 years ago. The Taco John site did receive approval from the council. It is an auto-centric use, and they received approval for this program back in 2015.
This type of development, car wash, is not aligned with the Main Street initiatives and the call for people-centric development.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do agree with that, Alderwoman Evans. However, this property is on Broadway. Broadway is a different zone. Broadway is a C2 zone, which is an auto-centric zone, really. Most of the uses along Broadway mostly require an automobile to get to. The Main Street initiative is really for a C3 zone, which is our downtown zone, and it's a whole different zone altogether. This council, a couple of months ago, approved an expansion of our Renaissance Zone. We added 18 new blocks just a couple of months ago, and 5 of those blocks are actually along North Broadway, if you recall. So we're trying to encourage more development along North Broadway. There are several vacant parcels, and there are parcels that could probably use some renovations as well. So I'm one that I support the program in going further up North Broadway, and I think it could help renovate some of the existing properties there and maybe fill in some of the vacant properties that are there today.
This constituent seems to believe this is an indiscriminate use of the incentive that will jeopardize the entire program. What do you think about that?
Yes, I've read that example as well, and it will not jeopardize the program because it meets all of our requirements. And the state of North Dakota has reviewed and approved our Renaissance Zone plan. And the plan says that if your use is a permitted use within that zone, then you're entitled to apply and receive approval. And so therefore, I don't think we should be picking winners and losers. I think if the use is a permitted use, that use should be eligible, just like all the other uses within that zone. So in my opinion, I don't think it's going to jeopardize anything down at the state, because the state has approved our plan. Our plan basically states that as long as that use is permitted within that zone, you're eligible to receive the benefit.
So just to summarize, that certainly, that this is all within the purview of the program. Whether or not, the program needs tweaking or there needs to be policy changes is an entirely different matter for this body or for an ad hoc committee or something. But that, this has been vetted by you and the committee, correct?
Yes, we have reviewed this, and we feel it meets all the requirements of the program. And if we want to make changes, I'm open to that discussion. But I don't think this is the right venue to make that change during the middle of a public hearing. I think if we want to make those changes, we should do that in another venue.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Billingsley. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. Any further questions for Mr. Billingsley? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Discussion from council. Alderman Pittner.
Just to be clear, I'll be abstaining from this vote as well. It's the same
Okay.
property. I'll be abstaining.
Any further discussion? Alderman Patagula.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Billingsley that it's not a real good idea to change the rules in the middle of an application. But I really have a hard time supporting this. I respectfully think that's too technical a perspective to take. This is valuable property. A lot of people will pass by it. The Taco John's is an addition, a positive addition there. I think this is deviant enough from the kinds of properties that are developing there, and then we've developed in other places on Broadway, where I'm just not comfortable supporting it. I point out that the Beaver Ridge complex, just a few blocks north of there, which is part of a Renaissance zone, is a wonderful project. It's the kind of thing I think we should be doing, multiple use kinds of properties. The Broadway on Blue project on the south end of Broadway, although I'm not sure if it technically was part of a Renaissance zone, also received favorable consideration from the city. I'm just not comfortable. I think that's it may meet the criteria, and perhaps we should reevaluate the criteria, but I don't see it adding. I don't see it being part of a renaissance of Broadway, really. I'm not comfortable supporting it.
Further discussion. Alderwoman Olson.
Mr. Mayor, I think the rules have been set, and this applicant clearly has met all of the rules, and I don't know how we deny it just on personal preference. I think that if we've set out rules and they have followed them, I think we need to approve it.
Further discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Ross.
with all due respect to Councilmember Olson, this was given to us to vote on, so it can go up or down. If it was, it should have probably just been put in consent. So it's given to the council to vote on, and I agree with Councilmember Padragula. I cannot support this. Thank you.
Final call for discussion. Lastly, I will be supporting it. Looking across the location or kitty corner from it, there has been a building that has been vacant for some time now. This is an area that does sit in the floodplain that will not come out for at least 5 or 6 years. It does have some building requirements there to meet, and this section of Broadway has sat vacant since well before the 2011 flood. It has been a challenge to get developed, and meeting the criteria, I'm going to support it. Final call for discussion. Seeing none, motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Abstain.
Padragula?
No.
Ross?
No.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
No.
Janser?
Yes.
It's a tie.
That is a tie. I would have to look to see if this goes back to planning from our city attorney on how that process moves forward.
Mr. Mayor, the motion would fail then, so either there could be another motion or it could be sent back to the Renaissance Zone Committee.
Okay, thank you. Motion does fail. Is there any other wishes on this item before proceeding? Seeing none, the motion does fail, and we will move on then to item 5.2. This is the Grondal versus City of Minot inverse condemnation, 517 12th Street Northwest. City staff recommends the city accept the tentative agreement reached by the property owners and their attorney, which is as follows. One, to agree to purchase the Grondal property at 517 12th Street Southwest necessary for construction, operation, and maintenance of the flood protection project for the amount of $205,000. Two, payment of the attorney's fees and costs in the amount of $8,000 to the Grondals, and three, dismissal of the litigation brought by the Grondals against the City of Minot. What is the wishes of the council?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Alderman Janser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman, was that Pittner or Ross? Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Second call for discussion. Final call. Motion is to approve with three recommendations. Please call the roll.
Dancer,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion approved. That takes us to 5.3, approve the purchase of 15 2nd Avenue Southwest to relocate City Hall. The city identified more than one building in the downtown with sufficient space to handle a relocation of the city's offices that were available for purchase. A feasibility assessment of potential use, available space, and estimated cost of rehabilitation was conducted. Based on the feasibility assessment, City Council determined that 15 2nd Avenue Southwest, known as the Wells Fargo Building, was the more feasible and cost-effective option, and authorized the process to proceed to seek the purchase of the property. Recommendation before council is the City Council will approve the purchase of 15 2nd Avenue Southwest for $2,608,000 for the relocation of City Hall out of the flood impact zone into the center of downtown.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Ross.
Mr. Mayor, I move we reject this offer.
Motion to reject. Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can talk about it.
We have a second. Discussion. Alderman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I made the motion simply for a number of reasons. Number one, going back, I wasn't on the council when it was voted to move forward with negotiations. So I'm voicing my opinion and voicing what I heard out on the campaign this summer. One of the things that has been that I'm having frustrations or disappointments with is a June 10th meeting where we were, myself and Councilmember Evans were part of a meeting to bring us up to date on City Hall. The meeting was called City Hall Options. City Hall Options. In that meeting, there was Mr. Meyer, Mr. Zakian, Mr. Lakefield, Ms. Greeneck, and some other staff members. I left that meeting with the thought and with the assumption that there were two options given to us, the Wells Fargo option and building onto the current campus. Building onto the current campus was presented in a 4-phase project. The first phase adding 10,000 square feet just to the west of our current city hall, basically on top of the old fire station, at an estimated cost of $7 million. And once again, I left that meeting thinking that that was going to be a viable option when you compare the cost of the available monies available to purchase the Wells Fargo, which I think was around that $3.5 million, added to the potential of being able to use funding that was left over from the gathering space, which brought it up to $7 million, which could actually pay for a 10,000 square foot expansion of the current campus and have it covered by that funding. Now, that seems like that was never an option. And as I mentioned it to a council member, I kind of feel duped that I sat through this meeting, listened to the presentation, walked out of that meeting thinking there was a viable option for City Hall. And I'm kicking myself now for not bringing it to council earlier. I guess you live and you learn, but this could be an expensive lesson. Another concern I have is if I go and I want to buy a house, I got to go to the bank. And the bank is going to make me get an appraisal. And the bank is not going to give me any more money than the appraised value. Well, right now I see it, whether it's federal dollars or whether it's city dollars, our bank right now are the city taxpayers. And this negotiation, this offer, we paid over the appraised value. I guess in some worlds that's called negative equity. We're already in a negative equity position with this building. That concerns me. We went up over $100,000 over the appraised value. We weren't in a bidding war. This property has been on the books for sale for many years. It couldn't even sell during the oil boom. And we're paying over the appraised value. That concerns me. The optics of it. The Wells Fargo building, we're going to have to dip into reserves. We're going to have to take cash reserves out to finish this project. Cash reserves paid for by the taxpayers. That account has been filled by the taxpayers. And in the same year that we told taxpayers that no, in Northwest Minot, we will not be building a fire station, that we got to put that on hold. But we're willing to dip into those funds to make some shiny new offices downtown. And finally, I don't think having a city hall downtown is going to save downtown. Driving down Main Street, there's businesses going in. Minot's downtown is thriving, and it's going to continue to thrive. Businesses are being built. Drive down Main Street, there's really nothing boarded up. So I don't think having a city hall on Main Street at a cost to the taxpayers is worth it. That's why I moved to reject it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Alderwoman Evans.
So as Tom said, on June 10th, we met with city staff, and we're quite surprised, just as newly elected members of the council, to hear a whole nother option, a much more economically feasible option, was never seriously entertained by this governing body of an expansion. Yes, we can get into discussion about what funds can be used and not used for with NDR funds, but it really concerns me that the public is not aware that the route we're pursuing, it doesn't make financial sense. I think we have to get to a place where this makes sense to us financially. We have to do a serious and realistic needs analysis. The current needs analysis, space needs analysis, is fantastical. 54,000 square feet, I have heard nobody agree with that as the needs that we need as a city government, that we need 6 copy rooms, that we need 6 break rooms, that we need a 3,000 square foot gym, or 4,000 square feet of meeting rooms. I think we need a serious assessment done so we can make the decision that makes the most financial sense for the city. In a time when we have no idea what the economic impact of COVID is going to be on our community, whether that's the private sector, the public sector, or our nonprofit sector, to go ahead with a project that will ask $10 million of dollars to be used for this is, to me, unethical until we can figure out, how bad we are going to be impacted by COVID. We have, like Mr. Ross said, we have delayed the fire station, the retaining wall. We are the entrusted stewards of taxpayer dollars. I cannot, in good conscience, tell taxpayers that I feel like I am comfortable with this plan, that I am convinced we need 54,000 square feet. I would like this to be, I am not opposed that we don't need space or have that, but I don't think what we have before us is accurate data. And I cannot make a decision if I don't have accurate data in front of me on what it is we need, what it's going to cost, what that would mean, taking $10 million out of reserves if in 6 months from now we are in total economic decimation in the city because of COVID. So I cannot vote for something that, to me, I cannot make financial sense of, and I do not have accurate information on.
Other discussion? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just get some clarification from whoever wants to take this? I hear the number $10 million from local cost share. Is that reflective of our substantial amendment we did to shift funds from the gathering space?
Mr. Zakian, I will look to you for the NDR rules.
It's on. Yes. Mayor, Aldermen, Alderwomen, to your question, Alderman Pittner, there is $7,750,000 that is available under the NDR. There are a number of numbers that have been thrown around in terms of what additional funds may or may not be needed. I can only speak, and there have been other options discussed, as both Alderman Ross and Alderwoman Evans mentioned. I have only been focused on the NDR. NDR is apples to apples. So if this building is approximately 24,000 square feet, all we have been talking about from the beginning on the NDR side is moving this facility out of harm's way, out of the flood zone. And this is why HUD approved this, and move it into the downtown. 25,000, 25,000. That's what it's always been. There have been discussions and estimates that there may be several $1 million necessary in city funds to complete it. And I would defer to the city engineer and the city engineer's office down the road, or, I'm not going to speculate, but it may not be necessary. But I will tell you that since 2015, and HUD looks at the city as a city. And in 2015, the city made a commitment to HUD. They said, if you allow us, at that time it was $3,750,000. If you give us $3,750,000, and this is in the action plan, we have $2.5 million in city funds, we will commit to this project. And then in 2016, when HUD approved the city's application and the city executed a grant agreement and HUD approved the grant agreement and the action plan, that $2.5 million of city funds was still a commitment on the part of the city. Now, we flash forward to the present. We did do a substantial amendment several months ago, ending the gathering space. We moved $2 million of that to the CTE, and then we moved the balance to City Hall, which brought it up to $7,750,000. I was in attendance at the June briefing session with our two new elected officials. I cannot speak for anybody else, but I never said that that second option that was discussed was eligible under NDR. I have made it clear in multiple times, in multiple meetings, before this council multiple times, that both the action plan and the waiver that HUD approved for allowing us to use these funds specified that it's for purchasing a building in the downtown, and it's only for rehab. It's not for new construction. And that's why I'm here before you today. The other thing, I do appreciate the concerns raised, but I do want to point out that under the federal rules, when you do a voluntary acquisition under the Uniform Relocation Act, you can either use a city assessed value, you can use an independent appraisal, or you can use another justifiable measure to establish your baseline offer price. Now, the current city assessed value on this property is $2,740,000. I thought it was worth the expense of $5,000 to have an independent appraisal assess this. The independent appraiser came in at 2.5. So in my mind, what I was doing was I had established a baseline value of $2,740,000, which was an acceptable amount that the city itself, through the city assessor's office, had set. But I also could start at 2.5 because that was an independent appraisal. My goal was to get us no higher than the city assessed value, but somewhere in between, hopefully lower than 50%. And as I stand before you here tonight, and I understand, there are bigger issues than just the acquisition, but as I stand here tonight, I can tell you that this acquisition price meets all the standards of due diligence and fiduciary responsibility under the federal rules and under HUD rules as being a necessary and reasonable cost for this purchase of this property.
Thank you, Mr. Zakian. Alderwoman Evans.
Okay, I don't know. So, with HUD, what I keep on hearing is this the dog wagging, the tail wagging the dog. You know what? Yes, I know HUD, they would prefer we do this, but, we as the governing body have to do what's best for our community. And this, in my opinion, is not the financially prudent thing to do. Will HUD get ticked off? Yeah, probably. But I can't be motivated by what a federal agency is going to think or not think of Minot. I need to be motivated by what my community is going to look like in 6 months or 12 months and what it will look like to take. And, again, you even said we've had numbers here and there. You know what? How are we voting on something we don't even know the cost that it's going to take out of the reserves? I've heard 5 million, I've heard 7 million, I've heard 10 million, and you're being asked to vote on some, random number that, could be, everybody knows is going to dip into reserves. What's it going to be? So, we don't even have this information in front of us to make a cogent decision about what this is going to cost to us as a governing body and to the taxpayers of this city. And just as we asked HUD, again, they'll be ask HUD for revisions in 2015. We can ask them for revisions again. Would it tick them off? Probably. But you know what? Lots has changed in this country, in this state, and in this city since 2015. And I think, there are reasons why, what we thought was the best way to move forward in 2015 may not be the reality in 2020 or 2021 for Minot. So I just want, there is not a prohibition on us asking HUD, right, for a revision, even if the likelihood is very strong, they would say no, correct?
Mayor Sitma, Alderwoman Evans, you can never not ask. I think that answer is yes. You can never not ask. There's no prohibition.
Right.
You can ask. But if I might, the issue here is multifaceted. First of all, I do want to make it clear from the beginning so there's no misunderstanding where this item, where the current motion to be approved. You cannot use NDR funds on this site. That I can tell you. That is a prohibition because this site is in the floodplain. And if you're going to use NDR funds, this is flood impact funds. So we have to, now that's not to say I can't go ask HUD for new construction, but it's going to have to be somewhere other than on this building or adjacent to this building. It has to be outside of the floodplain, or I will never even be allowed to have a conversation with them. That's a fundamental rule. What we will be asking them to do, if this is not approved, this purchase price is not approved, and we do not move forward, is that there are going to be two key corrections that I will be requesting HUD to allow us to do, both with multiple ramifications. One is to change the waiver. Now, I do want to make it clear, in fairness to all of you, this waiver is almost literally never granted, ever, because there is in the HUD statute, which has been in there for 40 years, a prohibition in using CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, and Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds for city halls. So we got an extremely rare waiver, and it wasn't easy to get, but we got it. The waiver specifically says in its language that this is for rehab and acquisition to relocate City Hall to the downtown. And again, that was mirroring what was in the HUD-approved 2016 action plan. We are going to be asking HUD to revisit a waiver they almost never approve. We're going to be asking them to amend it. Now, three things can happen. They can say no. They can say, okay, we'll amend it. But if they're going to amend it, that is going to delay, because that would mean they're going to have to amend the waiver. And the waiver process usually takes 90 to 120 days. Now, the second thing we will have to do, if that is the direction I'm given, is I will then have to go and talk to HUD about amending the action plan. And there is the high possibility that this will require a substantial amendment, because the action plan is very specific. And again, remember, this is something that no one of us here in this room had anything to do with, in fairness to all of you. But it specifies that these funds will be used to rehab, not new construction. New construction is a totally different activity. We promised we would rehab an acquired building in the downtown. That's the exact language. So what I would be doing is going back to HUD and saying that I have a new direction, which is to amend the action plan language to allow new construction. And I'd also have to get direction on where that new construction would occur, as long as it's outside the floodplain. I will tell you right now, and I think I tried to share this with all of you, and I haven't. I apologize. I've been trying to. There is a strong consensus among the 40 DR and NDR grantees that are part of the Sandy appropriation that getting a 3-year extension is dead in the current lame duck Congress. It's not going to happen, which means that this effort will have to be renewed again after January 20th. I have a confidence that the major states that are far more adversely affected and far more interested in this than any of the other grantees desperately need the 3-year extension. And they are going to immediately resume this, probably in February, if not February, March. And their goal will be to get the new Congress, whatever its configuration is, to approve a 3-year extension probably by mid-spring. Here's the problem. HUD has made it clear to all the grantees. And right now, I will tell you that we're not hearing as stringently and repeatedly from HUD as most of the other grantees, because right now, we're tracking to spend all our money by September 30th, 2022. So we're a good grantee. But they're making it clear to other grantees that they will not approve. Take a step back. What they are telling all the other grantees right now is that they are going on the basis that all the money needs to be spent by September 30th, 2022. So please don't come to us, meaning HUD, with any requests for any changes, whether it be substantial amendments or any other form, technical amendments, that in any way makes it appear that your funding is not going to be fully spent by September 30th, 2022. So that's another hurdle we'll be dealing with, because even though I stand here before you saying that there is reason, rational logic, as much as you can with what goes on in DC, that we are going to get the 3-year extension. Between now and, let's say, the mid-spring, no one in the federal government is going to, especially in HUD, is going to allow us to argue a case on speculation. They are going to expect us to keep going forward as if the deadline is September 30th, 2022.
Further questions for Mr. Zakian?
Yes.
Alderwoman Evans.
So is there also, so if we wouldn't spend that NDR money, there are the NDR projects that can be funded, correct? With the 7.7, with a substantial amendment.
Mayor Sima, Alderman Evans, I would say that if a decision was made to forego City Hall and we still had most of the, remember, we spent a little bit on the environmental review. Most of the $7,750,000 left. Yes, right now we are tracking if all of the LMI apartment rental projects, if you recall, all of them have been approved up to an amount. None of them are guaranteed they're going to get the amount we've put. But if all of them track and go up to, we probably will need another $4 to $5 million.
Which could be reallocated.
Which could be reallocated. And that would be approved by HUD because we would not be delaying the September 30th, 2022. We are also tracking acquisitions. Now, I want to make it clear so that anyone out there, especially in the audience, doesn't misconstrue this. We cannot, at this point in time, absorb or handle any more acquisitions than we currently have underway. And we are currently reducing down the $8 million in State Water Commission match that we received in the soon-to-end biennium budget. We are still drawing that down. If the current tracking of the acquisition prices that we're absorbing continues, we will probably need either from next year's biennium another 1 million or one or 2 million, or 1 or 2 million in moving money around from NDR funds. Now, to be clear, so to assure you that we have been very fiduciarily responsible in maintaining this. We are currently, but we can spend it. I'm confident next year, but we're currently maintaining a balance of $5 million in single-family LMI housing, for which there are no commitments right now. We are currently also, we have more than $1 million in planning funds that have not been spent and are not committed. So that's why, I haven't been coming with you with any sense of urgency, because both the need for the LMI rental housing, if it does go up to the top, and the need for a possible additional million or so for acquisitions as we get closer to the end, that money is still there right now. But then again, if we took this and moved this to those two, then what we would do is I'd come to you with activities to spend the planning funds that are reasoned and responsible, and I would also come back to you with some single-family projects.
Further questions for Mr. Zakian?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
I'm confused, Mr. Zakian, about that meeting in July. You just told us that the Wells Fargo building has been your complete focus. Yes. How come at no point in that meeting did you stop it and say none of this is possible? And when you talk about downtown, the discussion was if there is a government entity that can show that this facility that we're currently in resides downtown, then it's viable. And we found that. Mr. Meyer, I believe, found that and presented that North Dakota Department of Transportation has this building and this campus listed as part of the downtown district. That's number one. I mean, I can't make this up. I'm not, so why wasn't that stopped? Why? And at one point, Mr. Zakian, during that meeting, you talked about the appraised value and the offer are going to be so far apart, it makes building on this campus feasible. That discussion was never stopped. The meeting lasted an hour and a half to 2 hours. and it was only discussion on 2 topics. And what you're also telling me is that the taxpayers, through federal dollars, through city dollars, through state dollars, we're putting together $1 billion flood control project, and we're not even protecting City Hall. I'm
Mr.
speechless.
Zakian, council had already approved moving forward on Wells Fargo in July, correct?
Mayor Sitma, yes.
So just Alderman Ross, and I'll let Mr. Zakian answer the rest of the questions. The reason he didn't stop everything is because council had made a decision, and it's not up for staff to then try to either subvert or change council decisions that have been made. It's their job to execute what the majority of council had decided. If you want to proceed with the rest of his questions.
Sure. Mayor Sitmer, Alderman Ross. I don't mean to disagree with you, but I never said that the alternative that was being presented by city staff was acceptable under the NDR. I never said that. The question of definition of what is the downtown, and City Engineer Meyer, in talking about a proposal for constructing a new city hall, did say that there was a North Dakota transportation map that expanded the definition of a downtown beyond what the city has traditionally used. And I said that HUD doesn't care what the definition of the downtown is, as long as it's determined and demonstrably demonstrated that it is accepted policy on the part of the governing body and other agencies. So the expanded definition of the downtown, which might present other options, was a possibility. But to be fair, all the discussion about the alternative was from a city perspective. It had nothing to do with the NDR. And if I wasn't clear enough on that, I apologize. But I have stood before this council, as others can attest, many, 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 many times, and I have repeatedly said new construction is not a viable option right now.
Thank you, Mr. Zakian. Alderwoman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a question for Mr. Zakian per se, but I certainly wasn't part of that meeting. I have sat on this dais for 10 and a half years, so was here even before all of this application was made. We have had a lot of presentations related to different options. And each time the decision was that building here was not the most cost-effective measure for us to take, that rehabbing a building somewhere else was more beneficial, and more beneficial for a few reasons. The building costs were less. It moved City Hall and it moved the 911 dispatch center out of Flood's way. And it also opened up more possibilities for our police department that is bursting at the seams. So when you take all of those things into consideration, plus the fact that we do have this NDR grant that I think we are incredibly foolish to walk away from, it only makes sense to me that this is the option that we take.
Thank you, Alderwoman Olson. I'm going to speak for a couple of moments here, as I feel like I've hit a time warp. We have spent dozens of hours, I feel, on this conversation, going through needs analysis and the proof in the pudding that it's not only the City Hall of today, but some room for growth. We have gone through ad nauseum where these NDR dollars can and cannot be spent, and why it is critical to stay in alignment with the rules and guidelines. Otherwise, we put not only the NDR at risk, but we also put those matching funds that we said to the federal government, HUD, that we would find and match. And we are and would be responsible for the repayment of that if we default, if we are out of alignment. And that absolutely would be an excessive, expensive decision and lesson by this council, probably for decades, to the city of Minot. This is not wagging the dog. We have gone through hours of this discussion on why we finally came to the decision to move City Hall. And we do not need to have the entire City Hall finished by September 30th, 2022. we do need to have the $7.75 million spent. So if we do need to take the time and plan like we have for Fire Station 5 or the retaining wall years in the budget, we can do that. And that we don't have to expend those funds, the remaining funds of that $2.5 million by that deadline. But we do have to spend that at some point, meeting those federal guidelines, if I'm not mistaken. Now, as far as the information, there's hours of it on YouTube. I've seen it, I've gone through it. As far as the studies go and the needs analysis and COVID, if there's no other lesson, is that spacing in this city hall is not only inadequate for city staff, but we have city staff spread around other buildings that, in terms of trying to be efficient with any of our work lines, creates a very big disadvantage. I could go on for hours. I'm not going to. I supported it from the beginning. I'm going to support it tonight. I'm not going to let the confusion of either misunderstanding or just disagreeing with it sway my opinion on this, because this per square foot is the best option. It is the best impact to downtown. It was in 2015, and it especially will be after COVID. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to do something dangerous. I'm just going to start talking and see where this takes me through my notes. But the best example I can well, I'll start where kind of the mayor left off. I wasn't on board with this project from the beginning until we eliminated the gathering space and moved funds over to this project is when I came on board with it, because again, that makes it the most economically feasible option out there on a per square foot basis. When I think of, and I compare this to myself, I've got a honey-do list. I've big ticket items I got to get done. I've got a new roof I want to do. I've got to finish my basement. I got to do my steps, my banister. The roof is probably number 3 on the list because I think I can limp by for a couple more years. But I'll tell you what, if the federal government came and said, Paul, we'll pay this year, if you do it this year, we'll pay for 2/3 of that project, you better bet your bottom dollar I'm going to come up with that, because that is the best and most economically responsible thing to do. What are we going to do in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now when we look back and say, holy buckets, we're busting at the seams at City Hall, at the police department, which we are already doing, and then look back and say we had $7.75 million to use, and we just didn't do it. So the fire station versus City Hall, public safety versus a City Hall, I hear that argument, but the federal government isn't clamoring to give us 75%, 2/3 of the cost of doing a fire station in Northwest Minot. I wish they were. If that were the case, I would probably be on board with that over City Hall. Is downtown doing well? Yeah, I think it is, Tom. I really do. I think it is. But that's like saying that I'm in shape, I'm going to stop working out. I'm in shape. I don't need to work out anymore. If downtown is doing well, let's continue to help it do well. Let's put 70+ people downtown. Let's put activity and traffic downtown. Wells Fargo couldn't sell during the flood. Maybe that's even more of a point that we should invest in that building. If the private market can't figure it out, maybe this is an opportunity for us to come and revitalize it. And I get it, we're taking $40,000 off the tax roll a year. We saw in the email today that one of the tenants covers about $37,000 a year on an annual basis. That would generate revenue. And I agree with Alderwoman Evans that I think there's a lot of whimsical ideas in the space analysis, a cafeteria, a fitness center. We don't need those things. Let's turn them into renovated and rentable space and generate more revenue for taxpayers and alleviate. Let them pay the utility bills. Let's see where else. I'm not even going to go into whether or not this building is downtown or not. We can't use it on new construction, so I don't think it's really a point. But I think common sense would tell you Broadway's a mental barrier for anybody downtown. I never drive home and tell my wife I'm downtown when I'm driving by the library or I'm driving by City Hall. I've never, ever contemplated doing that. If I'm by Charlie's, I'm downtown. If I'm driving by the police station, I'm by the police station. I'm not downtown. We approved a position for the police department in this year's budget. We don't have anywhere to put them. We're telling people to socially distance themselves, and you've got 2 HR gals that are stuffed into an office together. We got finance members in an office. We've got people in cubicles in a hallway, and we're telling people to be socially distant. We can't. If we have IT problem and there's a blizzard outside, or if it's negative 35, they've got to walk down however many stairs it is from the auditorium. We could put our position that we hired our economic specialist downtown into the heart of our community. Again, I could also go on. I get it. It's not something with COVID. There's concerns, and I'm not trying to dilute anybody's concerns, but I'm just trying to use common sense. And common sense will tell us, and not even common sense, our engineer will tell us, 12.8 to do a downtown building renovation, 12.6 to construct a new building, which we can't use these funds on, or expand the current campus, $15.2 million at our April 20th meeting. So you go to that $12.82 million for restoring the building downtown and then lop off 7.75. I mean, this isn't even apples to apples. It's not. Again, I can appreciate the community and their concern because I hear it too. I heard it. I wasn't on the campaign trail, but I heard it. You guys are building these brand new shiny offices downtown, huh? I'm not getting an office. I don't want an office. But I don't want our staff to be so limited that they can't even consider being efficient because they don't have the space for it. Or we're just telling them to figure it out. Again, this is... I think when we just factor in common sense, and I've had those conversations, my own family members, have you guys building these new offices? Well, this is what it's for. These are the issues we're dealing with. Okay, so if we're going to do an expansion for City Hall, are we going to do an expansion for the police department as well? Because when we vacate this building, the police department can expand into this one. Two birds with one stone. Again, I mean, I'm trying to look at this from 30,000 feet, and 90. I'll say 90, it hasn't been 100 because I know one individual just wasn't going to be on board with it one way or the other. 99.9% of people, when you discuss and make it evident the spatial issues they have here and in the police department, oh, well, geez, yeah, if you got the money, let's use it. I mean, let's be smart. Let's work smart, not hard. I imagine the financial strain we'll put on our department heads and our finance department in 5 years when we say, hey, Dave, we need an expansion. We need money in sales tax dollars or property tax levy to expand City Hall because guess what? Just like we were doing 5 years ago, we're still growing and we still don't have space. I'll let that be my rant. But again, like the mayor said, there's hours and hours of this stuff. I actually went back and watched most of it, much to the disappointment of my wife over the weekend. But again, it's all there. And you can talk to your department heads and we can tell them each and every one of them is dealing with spatial issues. We can't get around it, but yet we have to be socially distant. Now, I'm not saying we should plan for a pandemic coming around, but flu season. We lose money when people are sick, when people can't stay at work. I'll leave it at that. I'm sure there's more things, but I'll leave it at that.
Any other questions or further discussion? Alderwoman Evans.
So the whole social distancing and flu season, I mean, even if we went forward with this, COVID is going to be a thing of the past by the time, we're moving the two gals sharing HR offices over to a new city hall. And renovating this space for the police department is not NDR funds. That would have to come out of our money. That's not even in the budget for the 12.8 million. So that's more money we'd have to come up with. I don't think anybody, I mean, I can't speak for Alderman Ross, but I don't contest that we need more space. My issue is this the appropriate time and the financially prudent thing to do when we don't even know if we're going to have to tell department heads they have to lay people off next year because we don't have enough money because COVID has drained our coffers. And if you ask a city employee, would you rather have a bigger office space or, job security and so we don't dip into $10 million? I'm going to venture to say most city employees would say, I want my job guaranteed, and I just think there's so much uncertainty with the economic impact of this pandemic on our community. And I think, we keep on, thinking we're going to just land this, and we'll be okay. And I pray to God that's what happens. But I also have to be, mindful that may not be what happens. And we then are going to have to make really hard decisions and explain to people why we chose to proceed, taking millions of dollars of money for this when we were uncertain of what the next 6 to 9 months in our community is going to look like.
Alderwoman Olson.
A question for Mr. Lakefield. The money from the cash reserves, when would that need to be spent? Will we be hopefully past COVID before we'd have to dip into that, or will that happen early on?
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Olson, I believe that there isn't any requirement that the city money be first in this project.
Correct.
So it would be further down the road, but at some point we would be committed to the project. It could be left with a partially completed project if we decided not to spend that money.
And we actually,
Information, Ms. Alderwoman Evans?
we actually posed that question to the city engineer today. Alderman Padragula did, and he responded with a very tight turnaround that actually by January to mid-March, we'd already be doing RFQs for architectural services and contract approval April 1st. So we're looking at, next year is having to come up with some of this money from reserves.
Alderwoman Evans, and just look for Mr. Zakian. That money first used would be coming out of NDR, that 7.75 million. Am I correct on that?
Mayor Sitma, yes, under this project, we have no obligation to put any city money in until we have fully spent whatever the balance of the NDR funds are. And I may be taking a question away from Alderman Padragula, but he did ask me the question today, and I'm going to answer it for him. The requirement to spend funds, all funds, by September 30th, 2022, is that requirement that a project be completed? And the answer, and I've answered this before on several other projects that we've been dealing with, the answer is no. We just have to be able to show that the project is moving forward and that all the NDR funds for a particular project, whether it's City Hall or any of the other projects, that all the NDR funds are spent, not reserved or encumbered, but are actually spent on activities by September 30th, 2022.
Alderman Padragula, you did have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the engineer to kind of go over the time frame, because I think that was a very important email that I received and some of us received late this afternoon, and that makes a difference to me. And I wonder if we could ask him to review that time frame.
Mr. Zakian, I think you were CC'd on that. I don't see Mr. Meyer.
Mr. Mayor, I'm
okay, Mr. Meyer.
I'm on the internet.
Good evening.
If you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
To Alderman Padragula's point, our timeline it's extremely tight. Our best case scenario is if this moves forward tonight, the phase 2 environmental would need to take place. That's probably sounds like that's about an 8-week process, so that we're into likely January before we could take possession of that building. Then we would be able to start the RFQ process for finding consultants to help us design that building. That's likely about a 2-month process. Could go a little bit shorter, but that's generally the time frame that it takes us. Once we get that person or that firm, on board, it's going to be about 8 months likely to get this project designed and bid. So we're looking at probably the end of 21, potentially early 22, before we have a contractor on board and we're doing work on that building. I did some real rough back of the napkin kind of calculations here right before the meeting. If you take this 7.7 million that we have and take off the purchase price, we take off some of the engineering and some of the soft costs that we have, it's going to be a challenge for us as we sit right now to try to get all $7 million spent by the end of September of 2022. So if we do move forward tonight, we are going to move heaven and earth to try to find a way to speed up this process. But just looking at it from a traditional standpoint, we have a very tight timeline in front of us to pull this off.
Alderman Padragula.
I appreciate the timeline you've given me, Lance, but isn't your comment that we're under a very tight timeline, assuming that we have to have this done, or at least the federal funds spent by the end of September of 2022.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, what I was trying to work through in that email, and then with this discussion I just had, is trying to find a way to move the project forward as fast as we can in order to spend all of the federal funds before the deadline. Without a doubt, there will be costs that we will have after September of 2022. These will be things like furnishing and fittings, and probably some of the finishing touches on the building. But we were going to have those costs with city dollars anyway, with the current model that we have. So what I'm trying to do is find a way to spend every federal dollar that we can if we would move forward on this site.
Continue.
Let me present an alternative way of looking at this timeline. You're seeing it as a way that we expedite the process and move us as quickly as we can forward. I'm seeing it the other way. I'm seeing it as a process that would give us some time and would buy us some time to see how things develop with the pandemic and the economy. Now, the only difference between, as I see it, and please correct me if you see it differently, between my perspective and yours is that you're assuming and taking for granted that the September 22 deadline is it.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, you are correct. That, right now that's the information we have to go by. So when we develop the project, we would assume that is our hard date unless that would change. And certainly to your point, as we go through the design process, we always build in several checks with council where, there's always the approved plans and, call for bids. That step, of course, would be there. And after the design process, we would have a pretty solid estimate on what this cost is going to be. Right now, we're working with the preliminary report that was presented to you back in March, I believe.
And it would be possible, if that deadline wasn't there, to take a timeout, so to speak, without any major expenses. I mean, it's going to take us almost a year to do the designing, the engineering, and everything else, as it is. And at some point, I mean, we'd be, if worse came to worse, and we go through 1 or 2 or 3 of the steps in that 4 or 5 stage process, if the worst happens is we're stuck. We choose to take the time out. We're stuck with a building we're not fully using. It's still bringing in some rental income. We'd have to heat it, I suppose. But nothing terrible would happen. That building could still stay in whatever state we leave it in for X number of months until the economy improves or whatever. Am I right or wrong?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, you're correct.
Thank
it's
you.
a great building. Obviously, we'd have to service the building for the existing obligations that we've had in there, but we wouldn't have to occupy it. We wouldn't have to send it out for bids. We wouldn't have to transition to City Hall if the council would choose to stop. I don't know what that means on the HUD end. That's something Mr. Zakian would have to answer, but from my standpoint, council always has the final authority to bid or not bid a project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You've been helpful, very helpful.
Mr. Mayor, question for Lance, if he's still on. Lance?
Yes, sir.
Are you working from your office tonight or you're home?
Well, today I'm at home.
Okay. I think that proves a good point, that one thing that we did have learned is that through all of this, and the city wouldn't be the first, there are businesses across this country and across the world that are finding that employees can work efficiently from home. And in response to Councilmember Pittner's discussion about whether or not if the federal government will pay for 2/3 of your housing, you would jump at it. I was at a meeting where the federal government was going to pay for the entire thing. That's why I wanted to jump at it. So there's difference, and that's all I'll say.
Final comments. Alderman Padragula.
Okay. I wanted to kind of propose a compromise, at least from my point of view. and kind of talk myself into changing my vote. Last time when this came up before the council, I expressed support for the project. My only objection, and I was on the losing side, my only objection was to the timing of it, that I didn't feel we could go ahead in good conscience given the way the economy was and the way the pandemic was. This was in April, and things were going all to hell. And I think they're going maybe even faster, but there are some bright things on the horizon, pinpoints of light, hopefully. So what I'm thinking of is several things. What I'm thinking of is going ahead step by step, and at each step, stopping and looking if it still makes sense to go on at this point. I think what Lance has laid out for us is a very good schedule. It's going to take us several weeks or 2 months to get the environmental study done. It's going to take another month for this. It's going to take, 3 months for finding an architectural firm. It's going to take 8 months. So I think essentially what he's done is built in a series of stops. And that makes me feel more comfortable, not totally comfortable, but more comfortable about going ahead. Let me just make 10 points for the record. I'll try to make them quickly, Mayor. Point number one is I am very concerned about major expenditures with the pandemic and global economic slowdown. I am terrified by that, and I don't think it's over yet, and I'm not sure when it'll be over. Point number two, I believe we do need more space. Point number three, and this is a very serious thing, and this is kind of increased in my calculations. We made a commitment to the federal government, and I would be having a very hard time to violate that. We got $75 million based on saying we would do certain things. And one of those things back in 2015 was move City Hall, as we've discussed, downtown. And I would be very uncomfortable with going back on that. I would see it as a form of fraud in a sense. Whether they would ask us to pay back the money or not, I don't know. But we made a commitment, the city made a commitment. We didn't personally, except for the couple of us who were on the council back then. But we made a commitment to spend the money in a certain way. We've already made major changes. Mr. Zakian and other people have gone to the wall for us to try to get more flexibility. And I'm just really scared about, our luck running out with that. And I'm also concerned, again, in terms of us making a contract and reneging on it. The fourth point I'd make is that I do think we need a total reevaluation of the space needs. There are some changes. Actually, the more recent one we've gotten doesn't have a fitness center and doesn't have some of the other things. But I am very concerned. I agree with Alderman Pittner and Alderman Ross and Alderwoman Evans that the space study just does not seem realistic. In fact, we may need more space for social distancing or whatever. So I think given what's happened in the past 5 months with COVID and working from home, we really need to look at that much more carefully. To be honest with you, I am not satisfied that the former city manager was candid with us about that or gave us accurate numbers. I think he had, I don't want to speak to his motives, but I don't think we received a comprehensive picture of that. So I think we really need to reevaluate that. I think point number 5, the space analysis needs to involve the council. That is one disagreement I had with the city manager. He saw this as a staff issue that not even the council should have much input on. I disagreed, and I didn't press that issue strongly enough with him, and I regret it. This is something the council needs to be in on from the beginning, and I think probably the public needs to be involved in. We adopted a policy a few months ago of involving the public in major decisions. This is sure as heck a major decision, and I think they should have some voice in it. And they may have some good ideas in terms of how we can save space. So I think we need to redo that space analysis with a much broader perspective. The 6th point I'd make is an example of that. One of the things that we didn't get any information on that I asked, and again, I need to be more assertive when I ask things of staff, we didn't get any information at all about how much it would cost to digitize some of our records. We're going toward a paperless records system now, where you do business with the city electronically. We still have this legacy of file cabinets. What do we do with them? And I asked for information about how much it would cost to put that information in electronic form. I never got it. I never got even a rough ballpark estimate. So I think we need to do that as part of the space reanalysis. Next point I make is that at this point, I am willing to go ahead in a step-by-step fashion. I'm willing to take that chance that the deadline won't be extended. I think given the change in administration in Washington, given the very high needs of some of the other states, I'm I'm willing to bet on them changing the deadline. I don't see this as a drop-dead date. I'm willing to take that chance. Next to the last point I'd make, is that I think one of the issues we also need to work on is to look more carefully at the dispatch center. We promised we'd move it. It's in a very vulnerable location. I am not satisfied that the two public safety departments have given adequate input into that, and their input has been recognized. Maybe it has been, maybe it hasn't. But I think with some of the concerns Alderman Ross is raising, I want to be absolutely sure about that. And there are ways of finessing the design, I'm sure. But my acquaintance with law enforcement is that police officers spend a heck of a lot of time in that dispatch center. Now, that may have changed with COVID. It has changed. But I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with that part of it. I think basically one of the major rationales for going ahead with this is that we would be walking away from $7.75 million federal dollars. Now, yeah, some of that eventually comes from our pockets, but I'm very reluctant with the space needs we have, with the needs for more efficient use of staffing and facilities. I'm very reluctant to walk away from that kind of money, even if we could. And I'm not convinced we could. And again, I think there's a moral argument even saying if you made a deal, you need to stick with the deal. Last point I'd make is that at this point, my position would be, my vote would be, that we take that next step. I don't see this as an endorsement of the entire project, and I'm going to be voting in that direction to go ahead with this because I see it as a sequential process. And if we at any point see that the economy has gone even worse than we think, or something else has happened, I'm willing to take that risk and leave the project at that point for a while, for a timeout. I think we need a new facility. The exact parameters, the exact outlines of that, are open to debate. And I think we should look at it more carefully. But I think, again, we made a commitment, and it'd be foolish to walk away from this money. And I can justify at this point, if I look at that as a step-by-step process of any point saying, time out, we're not comfortable, I'm not comfortable going forward. So I'm going to be reversing my vote from last time with the option, again, of at any other point, pulling the plug, not pulling the plug, of taking that time out. I think we've been offered those points. They're seen as steps in a very rapidly accelerating process. I see them as the opposite. I see them as points allowing us to think through if we need to. And it also gives us the time to redo the space studies. If it's going to take them 8 months to do the architectural work, that gives us plenty of time. So I will vote in favor of this. I'm kind of surprising myself because I voted against it last time, but I think things have changed somewhat. My understanding of it has changed. So I'll be supporting it, but with those conditions. Got to redo the space study and looking at it as a step-by-step kind of process at each point, taking a good look at what's going on. Thank you.
Mr. Zakian, do we need some clarification?
Well, Mayor Sitma, actually to the primary point of Alderman Pajagula, you are going to have that opportunity because remember that every step of a process under the NDR program, I have continued to come back to you for approvals. So what you would be approving tonight is to go forward with the purchase. That is my responsibility. If the phase 2 has no surprises, then we purchase. If the phase 2 has surprises, I come back to you. If the phase 2 has no surprises, then I purchase. And Lance, I hope you're sitting in a comfortable chair because then I turn this project over to the city engineer. And what next will be coming back to you is a recommendation for design and architect. And then once that process is done, a recommendation will come back to you in terms of construction bidding. And then it'll come back to you in terms of awarding contracts. So basically, everything that Alderman Pajagula just mapped out, we're going to do. I don't want to presume what Lance is going to do because all I'm going to do is be the money man for the city engineer on this and make sure that he has the funds that he needs. But I'm sure as part of the architectural and design process, the space needs is really going to be a drill down. And that will be part of the process. And it'll encompass everything that has been raised here tonight. So basically, with more specificity, I'm echoing that what Alderman Pajagula is talking about is actually going to happen.
Final comments before we vote on the motion to reject. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify some too, that when I was talking about individuals being doubled up into offices or people in the hallway not be able to social, COVID aside, it's not a professional work environment. We can't approve a position for the police department, chief, go out and hire this individual, and this individual comes in, where's my office? Oh, you don't have one. You're going to be in the hallway at a table. Again, we're the city of Minot. We're the organization to provide services to the city of Minot. We can't even house our staff. And then to, again, Alderwoman Evans, Alderman Padrigula, and Alderman Ross says, I agree with the spatial analysis. I want to be a part of that. There's definitely things that can be removed. That should have been removed, should have never probably been in there. There's things that should be added. One of the items that I have, and it was only top of mind awareness because I have a pregnant wife, there's no designated area for breastfeeding women. Those are the type of things that we need, either us as council members or the citizens, to come with us with ideas so that we can make this a facility for everyone, for all citizens. This is their building. Just wanted to make sure that my points were clarified, that they extend beyond COVID. We need to be a professional work environment. We have an HR department with 2 gals in one office. If somebody has an HR issue, I would have to imagine they would have to ask someone to leave the office so they could have a candid conversation with an HR issue. And that's just my assumption, I guess. But I'll leave it at that.
Alderwoman Olson.
Mr. Mayor, in some of the darkest days of COVID, the Dow has incredible numbers. I think that investors have hope, and I think that we need to have hope, and I think we need to move forward with this project.
Final comments before we vote. Alderman Pittner, last call.
Sorry, couldn't read my writing. I've spoken more than my 2 allotted times, I know. But that's another item that I wanted to speak to, that, again, we can't as a city just fold up and batten hatches and not move things forward. Not many months ago, we were talking about implementing a recycling program, that numbers were coming out as we sat there on further improvements that we should probably handcuff with that program. Are we going to cut that program? We cut the city hall. We cut the fire department. We still have to move forward as a city and do better for our citizens and still look to improve. We can't just stand still. That's my opinion on it, and I just wanted to share that.
We have motion to reject. Voting yes on here is agreeing not to purchase, and no is to reject the motion. Please call the roll.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
No.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
No.
Olson?
No.
Pittner?
No.
Padrigula?
No.
Motion fails. Looking for an alternative motion, Alderman Pittner.
Mayor, I move approval on the item.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Discussion. Second call for discussion. Final call. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padrigula?
Yes.
Ross?
No.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
No.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to our next item. This is the Tourism Recovery and Resilience Project funding for the Convention and Visitors Bureau as the destination marketing organization for the area. The Minot Convention and Visitors Bureau, CVB, is seeking to expand the use of Minot's hotel and restaurant by increasing economic utilization of Minot's sports facilities for competitive events that require overnight stays, resulting in the increased economic impact of tourism and increased sales revenues. Staff recommends approval of the application for a tourism recovery and resilience project submitted by Stephanie Shanerock on the Minot Convention and Visitors Bureau, Visit Minot, for a 3-year special project totaling $477,000.
Move approval.
Motion
Second.
by Alderwoman Olson for approval. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Pittner. We have Ms. Shanerock with us this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Sibma and members of council. I just want to thank you for your time tonight. I'm Stephanie Shanerock, and I am the Executive Director of the Minot Convention and Visitors Bureau. What you're being handed out right now is a packet of letters of support. You, I believe, received those via email today.
We did.
Not sure if you've had a chance to review them or not, so wanted to make sure to hand that packet out tonight, too. So tonight I'm here to talk about the Tourism Recovery and Resilience Project. As the Convention Visitors Bureau, we are the DMO. We are the Destination Marketing Organization for our community. And so, you know, when it comes to tourism, so many times, fortunately, I get to work in this industry, and a lot of people think of tourism as being fun, and it absolutely is. But the reality is our industry is intended to be an economic engine. It's intended to move some dollars. And I don't need to spend time explaining why an injection of dollars is critical right now. We've talked about that a fair amount tonight already with other stuff. It's no secret that a lot of businesses in the hospitality industry, and just for clarification, I'd like to mention that the hospitality industry is far more than hotels. The hospitality industry is known as lodging, food, bars, events, attractions, transportation, and recreation. So when we look at that as that is the umbrella organization for hospitality, or the umbrella industries that fall under the hospitality industry, you can see why tourism, which is a direct impact to that industry, hospitality industry, is so important. So tonight, I'm going to focus on what this project can do. There are two underlying points that I really want to focus on tonight. The first point, and this was illustrated as an infographic in the packet, is good money. You know, when it comes to tourism, there's good money, bad money, and neutral money. Good money is the money that comes in from, in our case, outside of Ward County, people who come to town, spend their money, and then go home. Bad money is when locals here in Minot go to wherever, Bismarck for a weekend away, go to Bismarck for a tournament, whatever it is. Neutral money is when those of us who are locals spend money here. And there's no question, the focus of the Minot Convention Visitors Bureau is to go after the good money. The second underlying point that I want to mention tonight that really underlines this entire project is in fact that we are here to support the hospitality industry. I already mentioned the businesses that kind of fall underneath that. You know, as I put in my proposal, Stats America is one entity that says that in Ward County, the number one employer is the hospitality industry. Now granted, there are others that say it's the number two and the number one is oil and gas. There's some that say the healthcare industry is number one. Regardless, the point is the same, and that is the hospitality industry is a tremendous employer and certainly has been hit hard by COVID. So I'm going to jump right into the three components of this project that we are proposing. This project is a 24 to 36 month project. The first component is data collection and management. What this does, essentially, it uses GPS data to track the behavior of visitors. So we're going to be able to know where visitors come from, how much they spend, and how much they spent is tracked via credit card data, not GPS, and what they do when they're here. So we've identified certain points of interest where we're going to be tracking. So for instance, downtown, the State Fair, eventually the Magic City Discovery Center, Minot State University, things like that, places like that. So when people come to town, we can track what zip codes they came from. The point of doing that is for a few things, really, so that we can have a better gauge on what's the value of some of these events that are coming to town. Again, not forgetting that we're going after the good money, not losing that sight, right? The benefit of data collection and management and this component is that we're able to do smarter marketing and provide our stakeholders with valuable information. I'll just give you one quick illustration on that. We can, as I was talking with the State Fair and Hussfest earlier this week and downtown, I've talked with all of the stakeholders, or most stakeholders on this, is that with this data, we're going to be able to provide to them where their guests are coming from. And so I've gotten great response from some of them as well. So that's data collection. The second component, and one thing I also want to mention, is that these components all need to work together. The reality is trying to piecemeal this really doesn't work. If we want to do it right, they need to all work together. Second component is destination development. And in reality, this is the smallest component out of all three components, But this part is intended to provide some frontline training, marketing, customer service, technical training to, again, the hospitality industry, the industries that we've already talked about. Another component to this destination development is that we support the current attractions, the events, again, the entire hospitality industry. What I have learned in the last 11 months of being the executive director is that there is great opportunity, and a lot of these events and attractions and stakeholders don't have the resources to, I don't want to say not do it right, because they're doing a lot right, but to step it up, right, and to do it better. The third component of this, and this is the biggest component to this project, is team events tourism development. And I want to clarify this because, you know what, we call it team events, but I want to be clear and say this is not just sports. When I'm going to give you in a couple minutes some examples of who we've already talked to and to illustrate exactly how this would work. But the reality is if they're coming for choir, if they're coming for the arts, if they're coming to town from outside of Ward County and dropping money here, injecting money into our hospitality industry, Visit Minot wants to work with them and support them. So back to this team events tourism development component. Again, a majority, for any group that we work with, a majority of their constituents or participants, supporters, need to come from outside of Ward County, and we can't get gray on that. Also, a chunk of the funding that is laid out in the budget actually does go directly back to events to help them do what they do. But a really big part of this is coordination. And I'll give you a prime example of that. Tonight, Ryan Miner, who's the head coach for Minot State women's hockey, is here. And this is a really cool example. So I'd been talking with the women's hockey group at Minot State a couple months ago saying, let's talk about what we can do. What events can we bring here? And they're like, we might be able to get the 2022 national tournament here. Okay, great. So 3 weeks ago, so that we're like, yeah, okay, let's keep that conversation going. 3 weeks ago on a Friday morning, I get a call. And Ryan says, Steph, can I stop by your office in 20 minutes? Absolutely. He says, listen to this. The national tournaments have been kicked out of Boston, and we have a chance to do this. This is the thing, Steph. If we're going to do this, this isn't Minot State hockey going after this. This is Visit Minot and the community going after this. And so this is a prime example of coordination. So 3 hours ago, our proposal got sent off to the ACHA for the National Women's and Men's tournaments for April of 2021, so literally in 6 months, because they can't go to Boston, okay? Whether we get this or not, I don't know. I can tell you we have a really good shot. I've talked with the executive director and staff of ACHA, and we have a very good shot. And I can also tell you that it has been phenomenal to see this community come together. So this has been incredible for me to be part of, honestly. So Visit Minot's role in this is we're kind of the hub. And what we've done is connected all these dots. So between Mesa and Park District and Trinity Sports Medicine and the hotels and meals, restaurants, because part of this package, not to get into the details, but part of the package that we're going after with this is we provide number one, deeply discounted hotel rooms. We help subsidize that. It's a whole program that I could get into that I don't need to detail tonight. My point is, it's been a tremendous amount of work that has been incredible to see. And this community has come together, and the support has been awesome. So I am very excited to know within the next 2 to 3 weeks if we end up landing that. So that's a one example, and I should mention as well that Wade Regier was going to be here tonight, but he mentioned just a couple hours ago he couldn't come. Another example, and this is really a big example of coordination. Minot, as we know, or some of you know, have a really terrific girls fast pitch program. It's led by Thor Nelson. There's 300 girls in that program, and it's 100% led by volunteers. So through working with them, and his letter of support is in your packet as well. Through working with them, he's like, we could do more if we had help, if we had coordination. And that is exactly what Visit Minot's role is to do moving forward as part of this project. The thing about tourism is because of COVID, we don't know what this is looking like. Some people project it's going to be 2022. Some say beyond. I don't think anybody really knows. But this is the one component that I am energized by, and that is there is a universal opinion that youth sports tourism is expected to rebound more quickly than traditional tourism. So I believe this is an opportunity for us, and I do believe that we need to strike while the iron is hot. Visit Minot is certainly ready to do that. So one key component to this, and I think it's a really key component, is how do we measure the success of this? Because I'm not, the board, Visit Minot, and staff are looking to be completely accountable to this investment that we are requesting. We have found a tool, and I've worked with the Department of Commerce on this. So there's a tool through Destinations International and the Sports Events and Tourism Association. They have a sports module. Our intent is to subscribe to that. It's a very dynamic module that provides, it says if it's a adult amateur sport versus a youth tournament versus a national college tournament. It has a different formula for each. What we're committing to is that we will provide a report to the city on every event or group, I should say, that we support to show exactly how this is performing. We are not looking, in this case, well, in any case, we are not looking for a handout. This money is intended to work. Every penny of it is intended to work very hard. So the projection to this that we have committed to is a $10 million economic impact. I don't have any concerns about being able to hit that. We are asking for $477,000 total over the next 3 years. One just kind of example, and again, this is in an infographic in my packet, is that it's kind of a standard formula that the Department of Commerce uses. So they say that, over a weekend, so 12 teams, 15 players, 2 nights, they say there's a direct spend of $102,000. It's about $8,500 a team. The thing I want to mention about this is, sometimes in economic development, there can be multipliers that can make economic development look inflated. The numbers that we have pitched tonight are direct spend. It's not multipliers, because we want to be as straightforward as we possibly can be on this. I do believe that this project can be a bridge for the hospitality industry between COVID and recovery. So again, we are requesting an investment from the City of Minot for $477,000 over the next 3 years. And I am happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Shanrock. Questions for Stephanie? Any questions? Mr. Lakefield, you look like you have something to add.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just for a little bit of clarification, what we were looking for tonight is approval or direction to move forward with this project. There are still a number of steps that would be required, agreements between Visit Minot and the city, as well as a budget amendment to appropriate the funding. So we would have to bring those items back to a future council meeting. So just so everyone's clear, this is the direction to move forward with the concept, and we would bring those items back at a future meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. Alderman Patagula.
That was going to be my major question, is where the money's going to come from. And it makes me feel a little bit better that we're talking about a long-range project with metrics that we can see if the thing's being successful. And also, a lot of thought, it sounds like, is going to be put into this. Any preliminary guesses as to where we might round up the money?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Patagula, our expectation at this point is that the funding would come from sales tax dollars allocated for economic development. And this is, an activity that would be allowed under our existing city ordinance for the use of the sales tax dollars.
So magic fund or like magic fund or?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padrigula, it is in the same portion of economic development. When we established the city's economic development arm back, I believe it was in 2019 that the council approved that. We also revised the sales tax ordinances in the last year, and it would be an allowed expense. It would not go through the Magic Fund. It would be handled through the city's economic development activities, but it is still allowed under the ordinance, the existing ordinance.
But would that be from that same funding stream in general? Sales taxes?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padrigula, it is the same allocation of sales tax dollars.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions? Bittner.
No questions. I just wanted to maybe give some background. I sit on the Visit Minot board as a representative of the council. I want to thank staff for all the work into this. I want to thank the mayor and acting city manager and I guess probably finance director hat on this one, Dave Lakefield, for helping this get across to this point, as well as legal with Kelly Hendershot. And our new economic development specialist, Jonathan Rosenthal. Jonathan isn't here tonight, but Jonathan sat in on those meetings, and again, he's our expert we brought in to help us move projects like this forward. When asking him, if he saw this as a beneficial thing to our community, he says, yeah, it should have been done a long time ago. It's one of those things, when's the best time to plant a tree? 40 years ago. So this is something that should have been done decade ago, if not decades ago. We have the ingredients. We have the Mesa. We have the Hovind Ball Diamonds, softball complexes, six plus golf courses. We have the State University with sports and activities that range from public speaking to wrestling to football to women's softball that all require national tournaments, regional tournaments, district tournaments that Minot has the facilities to house. All Seasons Arena, the auditorium, the MSU Dome. That I don't think a lot of these buildings or facilities are being used to their maximum potential. And this is how we do it. This is how we get across the finish line with that. This is how we get people to come to our community. We are a hub. And again, it's the thing I like about this is that we're not going after, and no offense to the outside communities, the Mulhalls, the Burlingtons, the Des Lacs, the Washburns. We're looking at people outside the state to bring their money, not where people can come to Minot and go home and sleep in their own beds. We want people in our hotel rooms. We have an abundance of hotels, if people weren't aware of that from the oil boom. Let's start to bring people into our community and have them stay here. The only thing that goes on in Minot isn't the State Fair and isn't the Hoos Fest. We have a lot of things to offer year-round, and I think this is a step that gets us there in perpetuality. And this is something that's going to carry us for generations. If anything, I'm upset that this wasn't done years ago so that I could have enjoyed it or any one of us could have enjoyed these kind of facilities, whether you partake in them or whether you just go to them. This is a big win for our community. This is again, Steph had mentioned Wade Regier. He is the head hockey coach for men's. He texts me. I know Wade. He texted me on the way here, said, hey, you've got my full support. I can't make it tonight, but you've got my full support. And I think we would see a book of these support letters if given enough time, because again, I think it is, and how do we measure this? I think common sense gets us there again. Just if we get people into the community and have these events here and get people to stay here, they're going to spend their money here. So again, I fully support this. I'm excited about this. This is something again that should have been done a long time ago.
Alderwoman Evans.
Hey, Stephanie. So I love that, Visit Minot is really wanting to step up and build in some accountability measures. I mean, I come from the nonprofit world, and we have to do that with funders all the time, right? So I look forward to what we can come up with to, sort of set a standard for, when we are spending public dollars on investments like this, on the benchmarks, and, you or, the members of your board coming back to us and giving us regular updates on those benchmarks, if they've been met, if they haven't, why is that? But, I really love that, we're being proactive about that. And, hopefully we'll set, this standard now moving forward with, accountability for using public money for these kinds of investments. So thanks for bringing that up, and I look forward to how we do this.
Thank you.
Alderman Patagula.
I wanted to echo the remarks and enthusiasm of Alderman Pittner and Alderwoman Evans. We have talked about this. In the 20 years I've served on the council on and off, but we've never allocated. We've never had the commitment. So I think there are two things from my historical perspective that are noteworthy. One is I think we've really undervalued the importance of these kinds of activities. I mean, humans have been congregating and visiting and playing games since the beginning of time. And I don't think we've ever recognized how important this is, or fully recognized how important this is for our community in many ways, not just economically. So I think we've talked about it, but there hasn't been the commitment. So I'm really pleased to see that. I'm also pleased to see the greater level of professionalism and risk-taking in some ways, the greater level of interest in things like accountability. And you're building on the shoulders of people who came before you, but it's very good to see the heightened level of sophistication and professionalism in our efforts. And I think this is long overdue, as Paul was saying. I think this should be an important and is an important part of our community's life, not just economically, but socially and in terms of people meeting. And, when this COVID thing finally gets to a tolerable level, I think we'll see tremendous built-up demand being expressed. People want to go out, they want to do things, they want to play, they want to socialize. And I think if we start laying the foundations for that now, if we start making the plans, if we start looking at and developing the accountability mechanisms and the city financing mechanisms, we'll be in a very good position. So I'm very pleased and very impressed with this, and just look forward to the continuing developments.
Further questions or comments? Alderman Ross.
You knew this was coming, right? Some background on my comments. I sat on the Visit Minot Board of Directors for a while. So that's partly because that's partly where these comments are coming from, and it's partly because being a follower of youth sports and youth activities in this community has long been a source of pride for me. This application, in my opinion, is a request for operating, and I can't see spending $500,000, and I understand where you guys are coming from by saying this is long overdue, but in my experience, it's been done before. Okay, my experience. When I was on the board, the advertising agency that we worked with at the time provided us with that data of what people do and where they come from. That was provided. When I sat on the board, the big argument was we needed more rooms. That was the big holdup for us to get events and to get conventions. We needed more rooms. Well, since then, we've come close to doubling our space. I campaigned for city council on the concept of victories. I want victories in economic development, and I want victories in tourism. There was a time when Class A or Class B basketball teams would come into town. By the time they hit city limits, they would have a police escort taking them to the facility where they're either staying or the facility where they're performing at. That made them special. It made them feel special. That was a magic of Minot, was that. And we did that, and we did that. And you would drive down Main Street, and you would see the letterboards. Welcome. Welcome, Class B basketball fans. Welcome, Class B teams. All the way down Minot. They did that without a penny. We had an active organization that went out and put together committees of people. Yeah, it might have costed a couple pitchers of coffee and a couple dozen caramel rolls, but they put together committees that did exactly this. You look at the facilities, and I think tourism, to me, in my opinion, it's selling Minot. We've got a world-class soccer facility. We got a bubble at Minot State University that, in its first year up, hosted a soccer tournament in the middle of the winter that had 95 teams. Someone did that, and it didn't cost a thing. You know, we have, for instance, Corbett Field, another beautiful, beautiful complex. We have a local business that put together a 7 or 8 team baseball tournament. Does it every summer. Wonderful. I mean, we get teams all over, and they're staying. I think the baseball tournament, they're staying 3 or 4 days. Doesn't cost us anything. And to have software that says, the software that breaks it down on what people are doing when they're in Minot, I can tell you, they're eating, sleeping, watching the event, and drinking and shopping. I just saved a bunch of money right there. And when we talk about common sense, that's what I'm thinking about common sense. I can support. And Stephanie, in all due respect, you just came to us right now and told us you're putting in for a national hockey tournament, 2 national hockey tournaments.
Yes.
Didn't cost us a thing. Didn't cost us a thing. It cost businesses in Minot, if they got to do some sponsorship dollars or something like that, that's where it costs. The workshops, I looked at that, the workshops. 10 workshops with 120 people, we've had customer service workshops time and time again. And I think we've even had them since COVID hit. You were doing either customer service or marketing workshops. We've got some world-class facilities, and I think in times we have to be creative, and sometimes when I like to do things as Alderman Pittner, you kind of bring it down to your level. Sometimes when you go through a car wash, you get your car clean, but your window still has bugs on it. So what do? You have to get out and you got to use a little elbow grease and work a little bit harder to get it clean. And I think that's what we have to do here. I think we have, there's just so much that I don't agree with this that I can't support it. Other CVBs, you look at the Williston CVB. They've created 2 huge events in Band Day and in their Rib Fest in July. They've created them. It goes back, if I can use an old sports cliche, if you build it, they will come. And we've built it. We've got organizations. We got the soccer people having tournaments. We got Thor. They put on a great, couple tournaments, And if there's a critique, Stephanie, and I know we wanted to sit down and talk about it after it hit, and it just got away from me. But when you have softball tournaments in town, this spring we had the Class A and Class B girls softball tournaments in town. I think there were 16 teams. Players, coaches, fans, officials, umpires, all staying within the city of Minot. And if we look at the spend on how much each team spent, that's a significant spend. But yet when you go back on the Visit Minot social media, there was nothing. There wasn't one thing that said, welcome Class B fans, welcome Class B parents, thank you for choosing Minot. There was none of that magic. That's what gets me, is that we have all these people coming to town. And whether they come from Moorhead, Minnesota, or they come from Mandan, North Dakota, it's all money coming in, and we should treat it all the same. I just can't support this, and I apologize I went off on my comments, but this is, in my opinion, a fluff piece to get operating money when we could be spending that money on helping businesses across the board.
Alderman
Thank you, Mr.
Pittner.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to a couple points there. We talked about Williston's CVB and the events that they created. They also have a budget. I think it's almost double. I think it's $950,000. So it's almost double what our local CVB is. And Steph, I hope you're taking notes because Class B, when we have events, let's show them the Magic City. Let's roll out the red carpet. Again, this isn't Visit Minot going after national tournaments. This is the community. We need to roll out the red carpet. We should have police escorts. With these tournaments, Chief Klug, wherever you're at, roll out the red carpet. We're bringing police escorts when they come into town, when they get off the airport. We're going to have signs and marquees. We need to welcome people into our community. But if that's all we're looking to do is get a Class B tournament, if that's all it's gotten us in the past however many years, we can do a heck of a lot better. We have great facilities, not good facilities. We have great facilities. The Pepsi rink is fantastic. The bubble is fantastic. We have coaches through all the different organizations, all the different sports that you have at Minot State University. Wrestling is a regional tournament. That's an overnight stay. You're going to have by about half the teams flying in. I believe softball has a tournament. Baseball has a tournament. You have all these different organizations that have tournaments that are national. You're bringing teams in from outside, and Minot geographically cannot compete unless we come together as a community, because people are saying, well, why would we fly to Minot when I can drive to some upper Iowa university and we can meet in the middle? Well, we can do reduction on rooms. We have businesses that are willing to cater for these athletes and make concessions to get people in there because they know on the back end they're going to make money. We've done it in the past, but again, we never had these facilities. We never had these opportunities that we have now. We need to adapt and we need to grow, and the technologies that we're putting in place, again, should make all of us excited because we're going to be able to actually track this. And yes, common sense will tell you that people are eating, drinking, and going to the event. I get that. But if we can break it down as to where they're coming from, for where these businesses and who to market to, should you be marketing to a farmer in Harvey, North Dakota? Should you be marketing in Canada? Again, this is next level stuff. And you want to talk about Thor putting the tournaments and how great of a job he does. There's a letter with his name on it supporting this program. He's all about it because we cannot sustain the tournaments and the level of tournaments and activities that we have are great. They are really good right now. We can't continue to ask coaches and ask volunteers to carry the load because that's what we're doing. We need to work smart and not hard. I get it. Magic City and rolling out the Magic should be all part of these things, but we need to do a better job to get resources, which is what we're doing, resources to these individuals, to these coaches. I've talked to the high school wrestling coach, a good buddy of mine. He says, I'll never want to do a state wrestling tournament. I don't have the time. I couldn't find the volunteers. I just couldn't do it. He himself could not put it together and coordinate all those things. He said, I got enough on my plate. I'm a dad. I'm a teacher. I have a business, and I'm a wrestling coach. I can't do this. But if we can give them the resources to go to Steph, hey, Steph, I need you to coordinate this. Or a state university to Evan Forty or Wade Regier and say, hey, make this happen, Steph. I need 15 teams. I need rooms for all of them. I need food. That's what we're talking about doing, and having a chef to put all these ingredients together and really make this a win for the community. Again, I appreciate the work that's been done in the past, but I'm after more than just a Class B basketball tournament once a year. We should be using those facilities every weekend or every other weekend. And when COVID gets out, when we get past COVID, again, the nice thing about this is that I won't have to take my kids to Minnesota for a tournament because maybe we'll have a tournament here utilizing these facilities, and I can sleep in my own bed. I don't have to sleep in a hotel room. Again, these are wins, and these are perpetual wins for the community. I fully support this. This is bang for our buck. This, again, should have been done a long time ago.
Further discussion, Alderwoman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Part of the reason that Minot has some world-class facilities is because of the investment that the city of Minot made in them. We were fortunate during the years of about 2012 to about 2014-15, where we were making investments through the community facilities grants that had been voted in by the residents of Minot. This is just finishing up that investment. This is just kind of the icing on the cake. And we've got the facilities now. Let's toot our own horn. Let's get people in here and let's let them spend their money in our community.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Is it appropriate for me to, I would like to respond to Alderman Ross's comments, if that's okay?
By all means,
Just
Ms.
on,
Shamrock.
just for a couple of things. Thank you, by the way, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Ross, for making, honestly, you made some really valid points. This is the thing that I would like to say in response, is that, and you know what, Alderman Pittner kind of hit on it, is that we can do better. The reality is that some of this is happening, and there is no question that when I have talked to every one of these sports, and baseball's been some of them, and soccer's been another one of them, they have echoed that, yep, we do this, we can do more. Give this, and we can multiply what we can do. So you know what? I saw that as an opportunity to do better, and knowing that because of the facilities we have, because of in some cases like the Thornelsos and there's lots of others, that because of that, this is all possible. And so that's, I guess, what I see the opportunity. And you know what? There's no doubt the tournament you're referring to, Alderman Ross, is the one in June, and it was the softball tournament, and there was 30, if I remember, 33 or 36 teams that came. We are projecting, if we're able to partner, we're actually going for 60 this next June, and we're going to use North and South Hill Complex if we're able to partner with them. Again, in order to grow it, they need support. So we can either choose to continue doing as we do, or invest a little bit in this and amp it up that much more. But again, your point was really valid. How we worked with them was we welcomed them in other ways. We had signage at the event. We had welcome packets at the event. We put it on our marquee. You know what? The truth is we didn't have it on our social media. Was that an oversight on our part? I'm not going to say it wasn't. But what I can tell you is this, that because of the way social media works now, the people coming from outside of town, if they're not following your page, they're not going to see it anyway. So it would just be locals, which there's value in the locals knowing. There's a lot of value in locals knowing that they're coming as well. So could have we done some stuff differently there? Yes. But I guess I want to be careful to make it seem like that we weren't there. We'd been working with them for months up until that, and to lay out that welcome mat. Can we do more? We absolutely can. The other thing I want to mention is that, you know, when you're talking about operating dollars, I mean, the truth is, Visit Minot, last year's budget was $525,000. It's true. Fargo's is $3 million, Bismarck's 1.5, Grand Forks is 1.1, Williston's $950,000, and Minot's 550. We can continue, and our income this year, because of we're only funded by hospitality tax and $20,000 in car rental tax. This year, we're maybe going to get $300,000 in revenue. Fortunately, because of the Visit Minot Board of Directors has been conservative and has done a really great job previous to me to have some reserves to try and maintain. Because at some point, if you tie your hands and your feet and then wonder why someone can't swim, that doesn't make sense either. So it's like, okay, what do we need to do to make this work, right, for the organization? This is an opportunity. And the only last point I would say, and this is a Babe Ruth thing, is that, yes, there has been a lot of things that were done right by previous staff and previous board of directors. They've had a lot of home runs. What I would say is that, as Babe Ruth did, yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. And we have an opportunity to win today's game and the future games. And that's what we're here to do. And I forgot one last thing. Alderman Ross, I can't remember exactly when you were on the board, but I actually was the advertising agency from 2011 to 2018 for Visit Minot. And so I know all about the data that comes from Google Analytics that says this is where people go to the website. We weren't able to track who came to town. The only way we were able to track that is ticketing, like through State Fair and Hussfest, and we do track that too. But again, we can be smarter, because with this segmentation, we can break it down by, hey, Ag Expo's in January. What zip codes are they coming from? That's stuff we can provide back to those organizations and, again, be a better tool. I think that's all I had for right now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Shamrock. Alderman Ross.
When you talk about taking 36 teams to 64 teams, and you say you're going to give them kind of support, what exactly? And that's what this proposal is lacking. What exactly are you saying the kind of support that's going to get them from 36 to 63 teams?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Ross, again, great question. Okay, two thoughts on that. One is, it's been our conversations with that event that they're the ones telling us that's possible, not me, right? So they're the ones saying, hey, with some funding to help fund, and we haven't even thrown out actual numbers, because the reality is, when it comes to working on a plan like this, we can spend the next 18 months figuring out every detail of everything we're gonna do, because this is just an example. When I provide this example for softball, it is just an example. Because when I've been working on this in the past 8 months, the light has come on as crystal clear as I've ever seen that says there is a tremendous opportunity here. So honestly, that hasn't been laid out completely down to the penny. Truth, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't think it truly needed to be. Working with that group, I've thrown out numbers like, okay, I mean, I don't even know if I should be saying these numbers out loud right now, but to provide an example, Alderman Ross, we've said, okay, so if you had $5,000, would that be enough to buy down the costs of some refs and this? And if Visit Minot had a staff member that would enable you to sell your t-shirts and coordinate some of these teams' registrations. And they're like, yeah, that would help tremendously. So those are some of the pieces that we've put into place. And I am the first one to admit that we have not spelled out the program for every single one of these, because it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? At some point, you just need to get to work.
As a follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Continue.
Part of this proposal also funds a events coordinator. You used to have an events coordinator. What happened?
And this person just, we actually already hired them. And she started about a week and a half ago. The position changed actually quite a bit as the focus did of Visit Minot. It was about a year ago, the Visit Minot Board of Directors decided to take the organization kind of a slightly different direction and be, I don't know that I'll say more aggressive, but shift and become more focused. I guess that might be a better way of saying that. And so at that point, we had a sales director, and it became apparent that wasn't a great fit any longer. And because of COVID, it was like, okay, well, now our hospitality checks are cut in a third. So what are we going to end up with? We already don't have a flow of funds. It was a financial decision as well. So how this position has been shifted is now a person with a marketing background who has got sales and marketing, and the skill set really fits the needs of this position. Did we put the cart before the horse by hiring that person before getting this funding? Possibly. I guess it was the decision of the board of directors as well as me to say, we can sit on our hands or we can get to work. And so it was a decision collectively that let's get to work and figure out how to make this work. And without getting into the details, I had been working, this was at one point going to be an EDA grant that had been worked on from May through September. Long story short, we submitted it. The deadline wasn't for 2 more months. They were out of funding. Well, by that time, it was like they were very complimentary of the program, very complimentary. But it doesn't matter, they didn't have the funding. So at that point, we said, you know what? This project, and I went through a number of different places, unfortunately, have received a tremendous amount of positive support in saying, go, this is exactly what Minot needs, find it, figure it out. And so that's how we proceeded.
How much,
Continue.
Mr. Mayor, how much financial assistance do you receive from North Dakota Tourism?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Ross, we've not received financial assistance. What we have received from North Dakota Tourism as far as cash. What we have received is some advertising, online advertising this past year that they were offering lots of different cities, or not, a number of different cities, CVBs. I did not bring that report with me that shows exactly how many dollars we received and what the response was. There was a decent response from it. It's certainly, especially this summer when we weren't spending a lot of money on advertising, it was a welcomed co-op, I guess I'll say. But we don't receive money from North Dakota Tourism.
Further questions, discussion, Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just another point that I think was touched on between Alderman Ross's questions and Steph's answers is that what Thor might need to double the size of a tournament is completely different than what a basketball team might need, an association, or a soccer or a touring hockey team, or I think that's what they're called, touring, a travel hockey team or a basketball team. We need someone on the ground catering these programs. We don't have the staff in-house to do that. Even speaking with Jonathan Rosenthal, Jonathan, this isn't where he should be. This is where Minot CVB should be. And we need somebody full-time catering to each and every one. The needs of each and one of these organizations is going to be different. So again, it's not just, I used to think it was a cookie cutter thing. Okay, here's our packages for a tournament, Minot, here you go. Yes. Each one of these is going to be customized to whatever these organizations need. So even further value that we find in this, so.
Any other questions for Ms. Shanrock? Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Comments? I guess more than what we've already had. Last call for comments. We have a motion to approve. The motion before us, approval of the application for the tourism recovery. That information, as Mr. Lakefield said, is also going to be coming back for us for approval as far as direction, where the money's coming from, and more. Please call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yep.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
No.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Motion is approved. 5.5 is the City of Minot versus Tonight We Ride Incorporated, the eminent domain attorney fees. In any eminent domain action, the court may, at its discretion, award the property owner reasonable attorney fees and costs. Any award of the attorney fees and costs would be in addition to any verdict by the jury for the value of the property. Any awards of the attorney fees or costs not evidence of wrongdoing on the city's part, but is a normal part of the North Dakota state law relating to eminent domain. The authors believe the settlement of the amount of $13,000 is reasonable and recommends the approval by the City Council. Staff recommendations from the city staff. The City Council accept the tentative agreement reached with the property owners and their attorney, which is as follows. They agree to pay the attorney's fees and costs with the amount of $13,000 relating to the eminent domain action and purchase Tonight We Ride property, also known as Ben's Tavern at 220 6th Street Northeast in Minot, which is necessary for construction, operation, and maintenance of the Enhanced Flood Protection Project.
So moved.
Motion by, was that Alderman Pittner?
No, it's Janser, but I'll second it.
Thank you. Alderman Janser with the motion, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Second call for discussion. Last call. Seeing none, motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Motion is approved. 5.6, amend Chapter 24, the Personnel Code, Section 24 through 64 annual leave. The -64, not through 64, I should make that clear. The COVID-19 pandemic has prevented many full-time employees of the city from using the accrued annual leave, with the subsequent result that a significant number of city employees will be above the annual leave accrual maximum. The proposed ordinance amendment will temporarily increase the amount of the accrual rollover. The recommendation of the City Council is to pass the ordinance on first reading, amending Sections 24-64 annual leave of the City Minot Code of Ordinances.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Motion by Alderman Ross to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Motion is approved. That is the end of section 5. On to section 6, which is personal appearances. Is this an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on the agenda?
Personnel code amendment first.
I'm sorry?
The personnel code.
That was the one that we just voted on.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The night is getting a little bit long.
Fine, I'm sorry.
That is fine. This is an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on the agenda. Good evening. If you would state your name and city of residence for the record.
All right, Jasad Stewart, Minot, North Dakota. Greetings, City Council members. My name, as I said, Jasad Stewart, and it is an honor to speak to you tonight. I would like to bring to your attention the mask mandates. I thank God for your mercy in not penalizing those of us who respectfully choose not to wear one. However, as more counties continue to add teeth to such mandates, I fear you too may adopt such trends, inevitably contributing to the efforts that injure our freedoms. Lord willing, that will not define your legacy, but that you will be remembered as worthy defenders of liberty and truth and being a light to the communities around us. There are two premises I would like to present to you in my thesis. Mask mandates are not good for the physical or spiritual health of people in Minot. The efficacy of these masks has not been proven valid. And two, it is an assault upon my obedience to God rather than man. Of efficacy, I submit that the masks are contributing to the illness of many Americans for several reasons. One, poor oxygen levels. OSHA warns that oxygen below a 19% in the atmosphere is considered dangerous. I can speak on this with some authority because I was taught this in safety training when I worked in the oil field. If one gets oxygen monitor and sticks the straw up to your face under the mask, it will read about a 16 to 17. Rebuttal, well, oxygen levels in my blood seem fine when wearing a mask. Counter, that is because your body is working less hard or you are having to breathe in more oxygen to obtain these adequate levels. Point two, bacteria buildup. Next time you drive up and down Broadway, observe the masks dangling in cars. Hundreds are filthy and infested with germs. Rebuttal, yeah, but the masks are at least catching some water droplets. True, some are collected. However, if you cup your hands around your face while wearing a mask, you will feel buildup of humidity. It is like trying to argue for the efficacy of a chain link fence for keeping mosquitoes out, which I've heard from doctors. Sure, a few might bounce off the chain links, however, garbage will build up around the fence. Likewise, COVID-19 pathogens easily fit through the fibers of the mask which people wear, while other water droplets stick to the fibers, some, creating a moist environment for binary fission of all sorts of germs. Conclusion to premise one, I believe the masks contribute to the spike of illnesses this year. Healthcare workers, I believe, have a priestly role in society by offering their skills to cure the sick and to provide remedies for those injured. However, man is fallible and we should test them in all things. I'm convinced we are not hearing many doctors speak out against the mask because either they're being pressured from above, risk losing their jobs, or suppressed by the media when they do. Now, of the law of God, wisdom from his word, I encourage everyone to read from Leviticus 13 and 14 on communicable diseases. God knew this topic would scare people, hence we see how America is reacting to COVID-19. Yet nowhere does it command that the entire population be quarantined or masked during outbreaks. You quarantine just the sick. Rebuttal, but what about those who are asymptomatic? Counter, we take extra measures in public, like having soap in public bathrooms, hand sanitizer, and access to fresh water. Those are societal norms to combat germs, not masking. Bearing false witness is the strongest spiritual conviction I have. The 9th commandment comes to bear. One of integrity should not participate in spreading false report among their neighbors. To do so is an abomination. Proverbs 16 through 19. In Exodus 23, we are commanded, you shall not spread false report. You shall not join hands in wicked men who do and be a malicious witness. Due to my love for God and love for neighbor, I will not aid and abet false narratives that feed from these masks. You can check out Event 201. My conclusion, finally, William Pitt once said, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement on human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants, it is the creed of slaves." One thing I've learned in my studying of rulers from throughout the ages is that tyrants typically like to use a crisis as a Trojan for their political machinations. We see this with Pharaoh in regards to the Israelites. Thousands of them became enslaved and slaughtered due to Pharaoh's false propaganda against them. Egyptians bought into the lies. Look at the great fires in Rome in the 1st century. Nero blamed the Christians, even though he caused it in order that his projects would go forward so he could rebuild Rome. Hitler towards the Jews. There were many accommodations before the boxcars came in out of necessity for the Nazi regime. We are told first to quarantine, now masks, next vaccines, and then finally we will be in a 1984 reality. I pray that you be honorable like the sheriffs who have done the doctrine of interposition on behalf of the people of North Dakota. Thank you for your time. May light prevail.
And just for reference, the governor has put a mask mandate in place that is enforceable, just for your information.
I'm aware. Thank you.
Again, this is an opportunity for public appearance for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on the agenda. Last call. Seeing none, we will move into miscellaneous and discussion items. We don't have any items on our agenda unless we do need any further information on COVID. As I was told, Ms. Clute would be able to come back on, but at this time, perhaps we'll see what comes tomorrow and get an update when that happens. Alderwoman Evans.
I just have one thing, because clearly I wasn't paying attention when we did item 5.6 with the city employee annual leave. Is I just, again, I want to say this every meeting, is, a deep appreciation for our city staff. I know COVID has hit us hard. Staff are really spread thin. There's a lot out quarantined. There's some with COVID, and I know that's made it harder on those that have been left to tend to all of the city work. So, I wish, we could do more than extend, annual leave into 2021. But your efforts, are noticed by us on council and the residents of the city. We have been able to continue providing city services, law enforcement, fire protection, all of our public works during this time. And I think that is a testament to how amazing our city staff is, and your ability to step up when some of your colleagues, are having to be at home taking care of themselves or their families. So I appreciate it, and I'm going to take the liberty of saying all of us up here, speaking for all of us, that we have a lot of gratitude for the sacrifices you're all making for our community during this time.
Thank you. Seeing no other miscellaneous or discussion items, we do have liaison reports this evening. Alderman Patagula will start on your end.
There have been no meetings of any groups I've been appointed to liaise with in the coming weeks. One meeting has been canceled because of COVID. Another will be held, hopefully, with full masking and adequate distancing. But things are kind of in limbo, I guess.
Alderwoman Olson.
Mr. Mayor, I do not have anything to report either. It's been a quieter month on the committee side and a busier month up here.
Alderwoman Evans.
Ditto.
I need to start handing out committee assignments. Alderman Ross.
Not like I haven't spoke enough tonight. The Zoning Ordinance Steering Committee held a meeting on November 12th. The committee reviewed the flowcharts for the new subdivision approval process that was proposed by staff. The revised zoning ordinance will be posted on the Planning Department's webpage during the month of December. We won't be holding any public participation due to COVID. We welcome everyone to review the ordinance from their home or office and provide written comments on the city's public comment portal. At this point, we expect the zoning ordinance to be ready for adoption in March or April, and the subdivision ordinance will be ready for adoption later in the summer. And I got to give Brian credit for providing me with that report. So thank you, Brian.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the Renaissance Zone board, staff continues to do a lot of good work on that, on the recent revisions and adopted blocks. It's a great program. And then as well as, I guess, Visit Minot, but we all got a taste of what we're doing there. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll just finally end. MADC discussions are progressing collectively with coming together with the chamber under one entity. Separately on the MADC, there's been a separate ad hoc committee that has been put together to ready for the upcoming legislative session. Task Force 21 has been meeting virtually. Kudos to all of the folks that have been able to put all that together, and especially to Alderman Janser. I've been able to make most, if not a few of them at least. Of course, a lot of that was following what was going on politically and how that was all entailing with the task force. And we are meeting now weekly with the COVID Coalition. Those are all the community partners talking about what is going on within the community and or all of our community partners. I will leave it at that. That is it for liaison reports.
Janser. Does Janser have
Oh, I'm
any?
sorry, Alderman Janser.
Hello.
I didn't see you,
I
so
have
you're
nothing-
out of sight, out of mind. Alderman Janser.
I'm sorry. I have nothing to add at this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Feel better, Alderman Janser. Thank you. Now
You bet.
we are out of items to talk about. Last item is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Alderman Pittner, second by Alderman Ross. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.